Hello, hello, good evening everyone, and a very warm welcome to another live stream with me, 320 Sim Pilot. And today we're taking the FlyJSim Q4XP Dash 8 Q400 for X-Plane 11. We're taking it for I say short flight, it's actually going to be about 2-hour flight time, maybe a bit longer, 2 hours 20. It's very windy. But we're going to take it for a flight from here at St John's, where we arrived weeks ago in an A321 from the Azores. But we swapped airplanes, we've hopped into this one, and we're going to take it from St John's down to Halifax, which is actually a hub, I believe, for Air Canada Express, otherwise known as Jazz. They used to be painted up as Jazz, I think. I'm sure I've seen a Jazz livery around, but anyway, here we go. I like this duck egg shell sort of, I think that was the name of it, Air Canada livery, and I've always wanted to give it a spin, so here we go. I used to fly the Dash 8 Q400 in real life, so I'm trying to use my memory to bring back what I can about it. So thank you all for coming along today to join in, and hopefully we'll have a bit of fun. We'll try a bit more about this aeroplane and just get used to operating it again, really. You can actually see it. I think is that the camera moving or is that the airplane moving? I can feel it moving. So the reason I bring that up is because we have a slight issue today with the weather, which is unusual. We actually have... Sorry about that. Yeah, we actually have an issue with the weather where it's about 50 knots and it's straight across the runway here in St John's. So actually, this would mean that we couldn't go flying in the Dash 8. The aircraft is certified. I can't remember the actual crosswind limit. I think it was in the low 30 knots. 32 knots rings a bell. I have landed Dash 8s in windy conditions, and they have an advantage in that you have instant power from those propellers. So they are quite good. You can also bank the wings, so crosswinds aren't as much of an issue because you can bank the wings. The downside is it's very light, therefore it gets blown around a lot, so it can be quite hard to keep stable. So you'll see lots of videos of Dash 8s having fun on windy days. They're just not heavy enough, and the flap settings they have don't really help too much either. But we'll talk about that once we get out to the runway. But I may have to adjust the weather. I've got live weather on at the moment, but it's just sitting outside of all the limits that we can use. And it's not slightly outside, it's way out. For 49 knots, it's just ludicrous. Incredibly, incredibly windy. So jumping into the chat, thank you all for coming along. First of all, I'll hop into YouTube. Good to see you, Becky Davies. Thanks for joining us. Richard V, thanks for coming along and moderating. I hope you're all doing very well, along with Danajay Suresh. Eels 1880, here we go again. Exactly, yeah. It's going to be a bit of fun, and like I say, we're going to have to lower that wind or we won't be going anywhere. The Dash does have a limit on its propellers, so you can't taxi it. I think it's 58 knots, something like that, or 60 knots, somewhere around the 60 knot mark. There's a limit where you're not actually allowed to taxi it because the stress on the propellers or something like that. And I've only once encountered that, but it is a problem. Jonathan Gunthauser, I hope you're doing very well. Thanks for joining us today. God Aim Checkpoint, I hope you're all doing very well. Yeah, we will be on VATSIM today. Simfly UK, good to see you again. And it's great to have you all here. Tom Corway, good to see you again. Lauren V, thanks for coming and moderating as well. Better Jurassic, I hope you're doing very well. 1 o'clock in the morning in Australia, so thanks for making the effort to come and see us tonight, or this morning for you. RHMLG, good to see you. Sean, glad you enjoyed the music. Xavier, I hope you're all doing very well. Kai, good to see you. Thanks for coming along. And I do apologise, there's loads in the chat that I'm going to have missed. Good, Igloo Foo, hope you're doing well. Lima, Ralph, James, Chris, great to have you all here. So, we are already connected to VATSIM, but it's a very quiet day here at St John's. No surprise there. Jumping into the Twitch just as well, of course, to say hi to MSJN23. I hope you're doing very well. And Lazy Evil, good to see you. Lazy says, never been on this route, but I've flown many on a Canadian Q400. Cool to see you in Canada. Yeah, we've done a couple of Canadian flights now. Lauren, thanks for joining us again on Twitch to moderate. I am streaming on both platforms, so whichever you prefer to watch on. Blueberry King, good to see you as well. And Manos GRP is saying hello from Athens. I hope the weather's nicer in Athens. I mean, the weather's pretty bad in the UK today, but it's actually slightly better than here. So usually on my streams, we use it to escape to sunny destinations and holiday places. But unusually today, we're actually going to be flying somewhere that's a bit worse than where I actually am. Because in the UK, we've had strong winds, cold weather, and rain today. But there we go. Beagle Schmeagle, good to see you. Hi from Vienna. I hope you're doing very well over in Vienna. And Tom, good to see you as well. Yeah, it's been a while. Thanks for joining us. Right. This is parked up, cold and dark. No problem there. Now, I think it is actually twitching. Yeah, it is. Look, you can see it. See it shuffling in the wind. See, this is where I really like X-Plane. It has some great little details like this. That's good. I don't know if Microsoft Flight Simulator does that. I've never set it up with so much wind really, but that's pretty accurate. All airliners, you can sit in and feel the wind shuffling, and you know you're going to have a long day when you get to your aircraft and you're sat there setting it up and you feel it moving, because of course airplanes are designed to catch the air. You've got the big surfaces and they don't weigh a lot at all. If there was a lorry this size would weigh, or sorry, a bus or a coach, whatever, would weigh a lot more than this airplane does. It's only 30 tons, and that's when it's fully laden with passengers and fuel. So yeah, it's very light. Something that's interesting is the propellers often spin, and I'm curious to see when we push back, we'll find out whether they're going to spin or not. I think they will, because X-Plane can model that sort of stuff, I'm pretty sure. But currently we're pointing right into wind. There's the windsock over there, completely flat because of the strong winds. So we're pointing into it, which is probably why these are stopped. But yeah, sometimes you're doing a walk around and you're trying to have a look at the propeller blades. You just can't get near it. It's just dangerous to try and put your hands in and stop it. You wouldn't do it. Same for jet engines. They do the same thing. But even harder. You're not going to stop at a jet, but these are big things. You don't want to get hit right head of one of these. Right, I digress as ever. So we are on the latest version. Here's my load summary. We've got about 63 passengers. There we go, 450 kilograms of cargo, and my fuel figure isn't showing there, but let's start loading. Here it comes. Total fuel at 1330, so the fuel should come on. Right, let's get stuck into the checklists. So before our checklist, reset fan. Oh yeah, it doesn't actually show you the power up here. That's right, so we're just going to power up the airplane ourselves. So batteries are going to come on, battery master on. We're going to leave the controller on, obviously, because if we took that off, the ailerons could be flapping all over the place. Lots of warnings. Well, the airplane is powered up now and on batteries. We don't have a GPU, so we're going to just go straight onto the APU to keep life simple today. 8455, good to see you. Thanks for coming and moderating. Manuel says, teach us great mentor the Q400 as you did the A320. I have a landing tutorial on the Q400 coming out at some point. That's in progress at the moment. So there we go. Mike's Basement asks, why does Heathrow have a radar director instead of the standard departure system? A radar director instead of the standard departure system? I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, busy airports will have director frequencies, which are just additional divisions of the approach. Otherwise, you can't have an approach controller at a really busy airport trying to do too many things, so they'll have the additional director. So that's all I can think of there. But let's get the APU up and running. Oh no, before we do that, run the APU fire test. It's funny how long it's taken me to remember APU fire test. Closes the valve. Crucially, the fuel valve shuts and the fire bottle's arm, so that's all works, and now we can power it up. If you run the test while it's running, it will shut down, and that's very, very embarrassing. There we go. While that's coming online, let's get some screens up and running. PFD, MFD. I'm going to have forgotten loads of things because it's been a little while since we've flown this. I know it was one of the more recent streams I did, but it's still it doesn't sink in very well when you take a little bit of time off from streaming. So that should all be coming to life. There we go. Flight taxi to taxi. Anti-skid can come on. I suppose we should run some flows really. So we're going to leave all of this off, windshield heat off, lights are off, but let's put the position lights and logo lights on. Then we're going to have the PFD altimeter to feet, flight recorder norm, engine fire tests please. All good. All good. I tell you what, at 4 o'clock in the morning, this process is can be considered a little bit tedious. We'll leave all the lights off, put the generator on. Engine starts to norm, selector switch in the middle, cabin altitude carefully set to auto. Halifax I think is about 0, we'll check that. Emergency lights to arm, no smoking on, fasten seatbelts actually can stay off, and we'll test the caution warning panel, and we'll test the advisories, which is everything else. You see that they're flashing red. I think we actually have to press that to stop them flashing. There we go. We're going to have the resoak fan on, the bleeds are off for now, and temperatures are set fine, and packs are to auto, AC generators are on. Okay, overhead panel's pretty much set up. It's the magic of the Dash is it is, in some senses, a relatively simple aeroplane. Runway 29 is probably acceptable for departure, says Lauren V. So, yeah, we'll work that out in just a moment, actually. So, resoak fan is on, external check completed, alternate gear doors, landing inhibit switch. So, alternate gear doors down here, over here are all good. And landing inhibit switch. Ooh, what's it talking about with that? I think that's that. Yes, that's that. What does that one do? I forget what that does. I think that's to do with the alternate extension system as well. Landing gear down select inhibit switch. Don't know what it does. I've totally forgotten that. There's some things you just can't remember. Flight deck door. Flight deck preparation. Briefing complete. Good. 4-star checklist. Circuit breakers are checked. They do work. We know passenger signs to come. So we can't really do that till we got the fuel on board, which is still loading. We're going to have 4.1 required. I think I've taken about 5 tons, which is close to the maximum this airplane takes. That shows you how little it needs. It just 5 tons is all it's going to handle. But yeah, there we go. The Jazz library was retired. The last green Jazz Dash 8 retired during COVID, and no one was really around to witness. Ah, there we go. Thanks very much. Interesting. It's always a shame. A lot of aircraft and airlines and liveries went missing during COVID. Well, not missing, but retired. Joel says, hi, I'm 15 and I'm set on becoming a pilot, but not from a wealthy background. Do you have any tips for becoming a pilot without tons of money? Love your videos. Thanks very much, Joel. My best tip would be keep an eye on the cadet schemes. Airlines will eventually have cadet schemes up and running, and they'll help pay sometimes for those, not always. So if you can find an airline cadet scheme that is willing to sponsor or pay you. Also, some organisations in the UK, such as the Royal Aeronautical Society and so on, will offer scholarships sometimes to help pay for certain parts of training. So these are the options I would recommend looking into. But it is a shame how difficult and expensive it is to get into aviation. It is a shame indeed. So I hope you find a route. Weather's died down now. 220, 32, gusting 54. 54, yeah. So we have to take the gust into account. We're not allowed to ignore that, sadly. Is it necessary to APU on, or can we start only from GPU? Jetfighter asks. You could start this airplane from batteries. You don't need the GPU or the APU. But you do need electricity, so it can be from the batteries or the APU. Oh, they're closing up the doors, so the boarding sounds like it's moving along. Let's start loading up the box. So we'll accept that. It's going to say out of date, I know. Okay, good stuff. Right, I've totally forgotten how to do all of this from last time we did it. Flight plan. CYYT, and we're going to, you've got to select it first in this airplane, and we're going to CYH. Z, totally different format to the Airbuses, which is Halifax. There we go. Good. Menu, departs. So we have to choose a runway now. So let us just take another look at the weather. 220. So 220. I think we're going to use runway 29. That's our best bet here, as Lauren V spotted. YHZ is 480 feet. There's 84.5. We have a few Canadians in the chat, which is great. So they're going to help me out here. So let's sort that one out while we're here. 500 feet elevation, which is, it's a very slow little gauge, this one. There we go, 500 feet. There we go. Yeah, it's we're going to have to lower the wind. I think runway 29 is going to be our best bet. Runway 20 looks to be too narrow. I don't actually have the dimensions of it, but there are limits on what you're allowed to do with these airplanes, and yeah, that's not ideal, especially although it is more into wind. Obviously the wind is very strong, so yeah, it's not so great. No worries, Joel, thanks for coming along. Right, anyway, so we'll plan on runway 29. It might be that aircraft can depart from runway 20, no problem. Maybe Dash 8s do every day. Wouldn't surprise me. Then we're going to YYT. Yankee Yankee Tango, which is Torbay. There we go. St. John's. Then we go direct to TechZed. Not many airways, or not any airways, I don't think, today. TechZed. Then we go to Agmere. You'll see that this system isn't as good as the Airbus is. It's quite easy to load up once you get the hang of it, but that's what it tells you, the coordinates. It doesn't give you distances or options or anything like that. So it's just not that ideal. Right, let's see if we can choose the arrival. So we go menu, arrive. They're expecting runway 23. We can change this when we're en route. Coming in via number 3, I think. Lille. We'll do the ILS Delta for 23 because we did non-precision last time we flew the airplane, I think. And what's likely to be our arrival point? I'm not sure. We'll... what are we going to do with that? Let's leave that blank. Good. So there we go. We have some legs taking us there. If we look on the screen, we have a departure, a vector back to YYT. So we're not really going to do that. Once we get in the air, we'll go direct to our next point. Look, you might have spotted me there, looking up here for the EFIS controls, trying to increase the range. It's so easy to do. Yeah, so that looks pretty reasonable. Off of, we're taking off. Sorry, that way. That way, no, yeah, if we're taking off that way, pretty much straight out. So that's going to be the most convenient for our routing as well. Good. Let's do the fuel page. So, the overlay. Yes, thank you very much. I knew something was missing. And it doesn't matter how long I sit at the computer before. Sometimes I do it for an hour just preparing things. Whatever I do, I manage to forget something. And I often write down what I need to do. Zulu Alpha 297. I did file a flight plan today, so I'm pretty proud of that. Thanks very much, Mike. Got that sorted now. 210 is a GA runway. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that'll be somebody doing something. Okay, good. Right. So, yeah, we need to just actually, before we finish loading that up, let's just see the departures. So it's just a heading 285 straight out, and then we'll go. We're not going to go via Torbay, which is off to the south. We're probably going to head straight over to our first point, which will be to TechZ. Can't see any stop altitudes on this. Initial climb runway heading maintain 5,000 or as assigned by ATC, so we'll do 5,000. The Dash 8 is quite a good airplane to start on because it trains you. One thing that pilots, when they get onto complex aircraft, so in your general aviation airplanes, you don't really have FMAs or windows or selections to make. You know, you can't choose an altitude. Even, you know, if your airplane that you learn to fly on has an autopilot, it probably just lets you press out hold and it just flies at whatever altitude you're at. This aircraft and complex aircraft, of course, we can select altitudes. So you have it a little controlled up here, but you have to look on the PFD, just like the CRJ, also made by Bombardier. And it's good training because pilots move on to 737s and Airbuses, and it's very tempting to read the numbers up here on the FCU or the MCP, whatever you want to call it, because you have numbers up here. But that's not what the airplane is going to do. That's just another display. Where you have to actually look is on the top of the PFD. But when you fly an airplane like this, you have to look down at the PFD. So it's quite good training. Something that I've always found easy when going onto the Airbus. Mike says, I've come to the conclusion that something must have gone seriously wrong if I haven't forgotten something when flying one of the Airbuses. There you go. Oh, it's calling the tug. Right, we better get going. So, passenger signs. Have we got our fuel on board? Yeah, go. So, just under 5 tons. We're going to be pretty heavy. Quite a long flight for this aircraft. Emergency lights arm, anti-skid on, fuel transfer. We have it off. And if I check the fuel page, in fact, let's do this properly. We should have systems fuel. There it is. It's balanced in the right place. Transfer is off. Emergency brake pressure on. And we have pressure. Power levers to disc. Yep, they are in disc. Condition levers are to fuel off. Takeoff data to review. Oh, that's not right. There we go. That should be up. Fuel off for the condition levers, which are these levers here. Right. So yeah, let's check. The loading should be done by the sounds of it then. Yep, it's all loaded.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed.
Pushback arriving. All packs aboard. Bags loaded. Fueled. Good stuff. Right. So let's load this in. So we got a 0 fuel weight 23 to 80. What do we need? We need passengers at 105. How many passengers? 63. So we type in here 63. Enter.
Winching strap and adapter in position.
Total cargo.
Brake when ready to start pushback.
Total cargo 450. 0 fuel weight 24654. 23280. So what's gone wrong there? 63 at 105. 23 to 80. 24. What have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? What is the assumed passenger weight? See, it's not an average. That's why. Okay. That's fine. So we're actually a bit lighter than that. Let's cheat a little bit. Let's drop that down. 24,339. About a ton lighter. That's strange. Okay. 23288, 23280. So that actually matches. Strange, we didn't have that before. I wonder what I've done wrong. I've obviously messed something up in all that. No, nothing beats the wind reports in the flight fighter. Oh, there we go. Q400 often does the milk run to Toronto from YYT via Halifax. There we go as well. Good. We're doing a proper route then. Yeah, still 50 knots. We have to work that one out. Okay, good. There we go. So that is coming together, and we got alternate fuel of, let's bring that one up. Alternate 674. Holding fuel, which I'm going to count as the final reserve fuel, 608. About half of an Airbus. We'll leave extra as blank. Fuel on board, 4.8. Gives a gross weight takeaway 28 tons, which is pretty reasonable. Okay, I think that's come together. Anything else on these pages? No. We do that all in the air. Engine 1, they're failed because, of course, they're not running. That page would be useful if you have an engine failure. I think you have to tell the aircraft that the engines have failed, and that way it will calculate your predicted fuels and so on. Good. Right. Let us accept on this side, and then we're going to go to master crossfill from FMS1. That's worked. We know the database has expired. I'll leave that one on flight plan. Leave this one on fuel, and we'll go to system, doors, system. This is the standard configuration. So doors are closed. We have electrical power off the APU. Let's get the APU bleed air on for a little bit, just for the passenger's comfort. And then we should have, I'm sure I had a flow for this panel that was 2468 smiley face, but it doesn't seem to work the same. And I can't remember why. So I don't know if Eels is still in the chat, or anyone in the chat who has flown the Q400 remembers. But there was a way to look at this panel and just know. So it's 2, 4, 6. And I feel like there was more over here, but I don't know. 8, and then you had smiley face, or maybe it's just 246 smiley face. That makes sense, wouldn't it? 2, 4, 6. I don't know. Anyway, I am just absolutely rambling now. As I say, this has become my late night radio show. Let's put the nav source to what we're actually going to use. So we're taking off from runway 29. So I'm going to put the course to 29. And then I'm going to put the source to FMS 1. That's good. We'll put the heading round for that runway. We know the wind is coming from the left, so we're going to put a bit of a adjusted heading. There we go. And we'll get rid of the VOR2 needle. I don't want to have that displayed for no reason. And can we do go around heading out sail? Go around heading out sail. So there's the FMAs for takeoff. Looking good. Right, finally then. Let us grab the weather. Altimeter 2970. 2970. Yeah, it's pretty low. 2970. It should all be synchronized. And we'll click here and get all our takeoff speeds. Thanks, Zenot, for the follow. Yeah, the meter for EINN is, yeah, Ireland's got pretty bad weather today. 280, 36 gusting 52 there. That's pretty intense. Oh, the chat's just suddenly come through. I do apologise if I've been missing anything. Good, right. So we've got complete FMAs. We've got performance loaded. That is going to be for a flap 5 takeoff, I believe, which should be absolutely fine from a long runway. And in windy conditions, probably my preference. Just get off the ground a bit more cleanly. Flight taxis on. Airplane's powered up and ready to go. It is sort of snowing out there, so we're going to have icing conditions, and that looks suspiciously like and sounded like lightning. Oh, there we go. We have Air Canada with us. They'll be definitely outpacing us. So let us finish the checklist. That's all done. Start approved. So battery master, yeah, we know those are on. Bus ties on. Doors, fuel lights out. APU bleed off. Not actually sure why it has to go off, but it does. Anti-collision red. And engines clear for start. Next will be the after start checklist, which is a very long one, part of the difficulty of operating this aircraft. And just for planning, I shouldn't have got rid of that. Never get rid of that. We're going to push back, and we're going to taxi out. We've got quite a long taxi. We've got to go all the way over to 29. So we're going to push back, and I'm going to face Gulf, so nose the other way, if that makes sense. It doesn't at all.
Ground to cockpit. Please show me where you want to go.
This is such a challenge for me. There we go. Good. So I'm going to not start the engines until we've actually gone. And I'm going to announce 1228 I should be on. My fault. St John's traffic, Jazz 297, pushing back from the main terminal to face northwest. Okay, let's go. Brakes released. And run. They're winching us in now. And yeah, I'm curious now. I want to see if that those propellers starts whizzing around. Mike says, I hope the fly-by-wire gets the VNAV or LNAV in the 320 pretty quickly, but I have to admit it still feels quite a bit flimsy and unruly when taking off and landing. I've been quite enjoying it. We flew it to Luton recently and I was quite impressed with the handling because it was a little bit windy for that one. Santiago Perez, good to see you. Thanks for coming along. I hope you're doing very well. Right, so I would say, as we spin across the wind, those propellers just start whizzing around. Thanks for the follow to Vintonia. I am a fan of this livery. I understand a lot of people aren't, but I actually really like it. And we got all our camera views set up. Oh, get rid of that. It's twitching. And also, of course, sometimes you had weird effects where this propeller might not spin because it's getting blown from the top and bottom, but this propeller would because the air coming over the fuselage just hits the top of it and spins it round. But I would not be fussy if that does or doesn't happen. That would be pretty specific. It doesn't look like it's likely to happen though, does it? Because of course they are free turning, just like the fan on the front of a jet engine. They aren't actually connected mechanically to anything. They're quite easy to turn. Alright, we'll give up on that then. Let's get the engine started. So starting engine number 1, did we decide eventually? Very easy. Switch to select, press start. NH has to reach, I think, something like 15, and then we'll put the fuel on. There's fuel flow. ITT, so it's lit up. All looking good.
Operation complete. Set parking brake.
Brakes are set to park.
Disconnecting tow. Stand by.
Okay, that looks like a good start. Master caution for something or another. It does have a habit of making noise like that. We'll start up engine number 2. We've got NH. Disconnect. It is very straightforward. Oh, look at that. The graphics are just unbelievable on this add-on. It's such a amazing piece of texturing, this aircraft. Hi, Jorg. Hope you're doing well.
Tow is disconnected and bypass pin has been removed. Hand signal on the left. We'll see you next time and have a safe flight.
Thank you very much. Oh, look at that, Tim Horton's coffee cup. Coffee cups have become a thing in flight simulation. I didn't realise that. I feel like the A320 NX was the first, but I might be wrong there. Pilot Emil flew to the Q400. Do they not still? There's the tug, so we'd get the wave. There we go. Goodbye. And you can actually see the person walking with you in the Dash 8. It's so low down. Right. We're going to follow this through in order. So external power APU off, off, off. If you haven't turned on the DC generators up here, it would go very dark at that point. Main bus tie off. Don't know why we have to do that. It's just an automation thing. It should be done automatically. Bleed air can go on and min. Battery temperatures are good because we didn't actually use the batteries to start, so they're nice and cool. Condition levers go to max. So there we go. Condition levers to max. Favorite part of the flight. Love it. So they are at max. Standby hide and P2 control can come on. This is backup hydraulic systems, so they're ready to go. Hydraulic pressure and quantity is all good. And then we're going to open the hydraulic number 3 valve, check it works, check the flight controls do move with it, and it's just the elevator, by the way. And turn it off. I don't think it's the rudder as well. Yeah, elevator travel, norm, close, flaps. We're going to select 5. There it goes to 5. De-ice pressure, check. So that is down here, which is looking good. Only available on the FO side. Rudder travel, full travel. Full left. Full right. There we go. Nose wheel steering on. Windshield should just be set to norm at this point. Heat off, warm up, norm. There we go. Flight taxi, taxi. Taxi. Radar nav comms we've set up. PFD, MFD check. Yaw damper comes on. There we go. That is the after start. Next will be the taxi checklist. So taxi lights going on. Altimeters are set. Flight instruments. And I'm going to do this now because it's just daft trying to do it on your own otherwise. We took the fuel pumps on, and the one I keep forgetting is auto feather select. There we go. Right, so tank pumps on, auto feather select. Flaps are set to 5 and indicating. Trims all 3 set, so we want neutral, neutral, takeoff. I don't think we set the trim in the dash according to the actual trim. I think if you wanted to be faster, you could actually trim it to a slightly more forward or back depending on your CG, but I don't think it actually, there's not quite like the Airbus for that. Next bits we'll do as we get up to the runway. Usually they taxi by runway 02 to get to 29. Perfect, we'll do that then. St John's traffic, Jazz 297, taxiing via runway 02 to 29. Okay, let's go. Oh, and we're going to do icing on, so we'll have the intake open and the props on. Brakes released.
St. John traffic, this is Air Canada 197, taxi to runway 29.
Oof, there's that wind. I'm not sure why it's smoking. Is that meant to be exhaust because of the snow temperature? So we're going to go up and then take runway 02, the little runway. So we go right, right, left. Seems to be the only route we can take, really. Wow. Yeah, so that's taking all the rudder just to keep it straight. We're going to have to lower that wind for takeoff. Because this, yeah, it just you wouldn't be going. Notice as well, I like that, the oil temperature is in amber. So you had to wait for this to go green for takeoff. There was a way to warm it up quicker. I assume sitting with the power levers almost at flight idle would obviously run the engines with a bit more fuel and therefore heat them up a bit. But yeah, goodness me. I mean, you have to warm up Airbus engines, but we don't actually have to look for any parameters because they're so self-maintained. Okay, entering this runway to backtrack. There's our colleague behind. There you go, you can see it. Let us clear on the right, clear on the left, and I put on the lights if you're going to backtrack. And probably the white beacon. Okay, now we're going right and left. Luckily the dash doesn't use any fuel. De-icing to your left if you wanted, says AC455. Thanks, yeah, that probably would be required today. This says static air temperature 14 degrees, which I struggle to believe. Yeah, the dash doesn't really get through too much fuel while taxiing, so that is an advantage of it over the Airbus. In the Airbus, you can find yourself just sitting there burning through it. Evening, Joseph Mitchell. Hope you're doing very well. Okay, we're going to do a hard left now. Head back up this runway. The sound effects on this add-on as well is just spot on. All the right rattles. Really very good. Okay. So let's get this one ready for takeoff. Go to the flight control lock. Do the ailerons. Elevator. We've already done the rudder. We're going to have the pitot statics all on, obviously. Leave those lights on. Got the props on and the engine intake. What else is there to do? I'm sure there's something. Flaps to 5. We've definitely got the auto feather, which I keep forgetting. Let's have a look at the checklist. So, oh yeah, takeoff warning test. Which you can only do... That's fine. So you can only do the takeoff warning test when the parking brake's off and the flight switch is in taxi, which is not the position it will be for takeoff. So yeah, imagine that. Propeller levers are at max 1020. Otherwise you wouldn't get full power. Pitot-static, ignition levers, what's that? Pitot-static heat on. Ice protection as required. Don't need the wings. Caution warning lights check. Flight clearance reviewed. Cabin is secure. That is the taxi. Next is lineup. Cabin crew notification. Bleed air to go off. We'll leave the white strobes on. So here's our holding point for this runway. It comes up quite early. So we're going to stop here and just check the weather. So we're finally almost ready to go. Thanks for sticking with it. It's been 40 minutes. That's quite typical. Parking brake on. Oh, that was from cold and dark. Hideous weather. So you can see that wind is just blowing straight across. Slight headwind on this runway. I'm going to probably get kicked from VATSIM for this, but let's just have a look. 238. So what we're going to have to do is just reduce the gust on that. Actually, no, I'm going to reduce the whole lot. Let's put it down to 30. It's going to be a bit lower with the gust. 20. What should we do? 27? Let's see if we can manage that. So, okay, so we've reduced the wind a little bit. We'll update it again in real life. And hopefully... yeah, I would do the wind, but it's literally outside the limits, and you'll find that we'll just end up being dragged off the side of the runway. This plane's just a bit too light. The Airbus has a higher crosswind limit. But there we go. So we're still up at pretty much the limits. We're at 30 knots. Just going to check that did work. 27 gusting 31. Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Right. Let's finish the checklist then. So bleed air to go off again. Bleed air min and off. Anti-collision is on white. Transponder TCAS. Hold it down to get on out. And of course, while we're down here, we should be in nav and nav. Transponder TCAS is on. Flight controls checked and free. Flight taxi to flight. Landing lights on off. So that can go up to flight, which brings up the ground spoilers. The lights are on. Next will be the after takeoff. So let's brief it for ourselves because we haven't done this for a long time. We are going to take off by setting the power levers to the rating detent, which will be NTOP, normal takeoff power. We could actually do a reduced one if you like today. If I just decreased, it goes in stages. So there's, what is it, 88, 86, 84, 82, 80, and then it resets. So that's all your options. So yeah, we can do 86, and we should just find that when we put it into rating, it just comes up slightly low. Look at that oil temperature. So I'm just going to put these into flight idle. We are with the brakes on, and that should warm up a little quicker. You see it's burning more fuel. Not necessarily a recommended technique, that. Yeah, so that's going to be the takeoff power. We're going to roll down the runway. We're going to have a big crosswind from the left, so the airplane's going to try and weathercock. The wind's going to hit the tail and push the nose to the left. So we're going to have to use a lot of right rudder. We're going to rotate at 130 knots. Pretty fast. Just check those speeds are still correct. They are. 130 knots, we're going to rotate. And we're going to get the airplane up towards, I think, about 15 degrees. Positive climb. Gear up. Climb away. Get to our acceleration of about 1,000 feet. Then we can lower the nose. We can engage the autopilot. We can bring the condition levers to 900. Set the flaps to 0 and put the bleeds on and min. Relatively straightforward, although quite a long flow for the first thing you have to do after takeoff. There we go. And then we're going to, at some point, go direct to TechSed, which should put us in a good place. So I'm going to have the direct to page ready to go. Can't think of much else, really. That's all I've got for you. So, is everyone ready to go? Don't get kicked from VATSIM if you pause on the ground. It just acts like you've stopped. Ah, very good. Okay, that's good to know. Still, that is that is still a mighty wind. St John's traffic, Jazz 297, taking off runway 29 to depart to the west. And we're going to climb it to 5,000 feet. Brakes released, clear on approach, lights are all on. That oil temperature isn't rising. Pretty confident in the real aircraft at 14 degrees it would be warm enough by now. But first flight of the day, maybe not. So yeah, we would normally wait for that to be green, that oil temperature. Right, let's get this right, because this is an easy way to mess up when you're trying to join a runway from another runway. Welcome to St. John, says Max. Exactly, yeah. So, there's the runway we're taking off from. Crosswind from the left, as we know. This is a fun moment on a windy day like this. You're sat here, aeroplane rattling, sometimes in the dark. You can see it. Right, let me just check I've got this right. So wind is definitely from the left, so the airplane will try and turn to the left. Let's get rid of the charts. Are we ready? Let's go. Right, we don't need any down elevator like you would in the Airbus. You'd use full side stick for this sort of crosswind, full side stick down. But on the dash, because it sits slightly nose down anyway, you don't need it. And I'm just procrastinating now. Let's find out what we've forgotten taking off. Moving into the flight idle gate. Smoothly add power. There's auto feather arm. We're in the flight rating. Already using a fair bit of right rudder to try and keep us straight. There we are, approaching 80 knots. All looking good. Rudder's holding out fine, actually. Pretty heavy for a Dash 8 takeoff, using a fair bit of the runway. V1 rotates. Up we go. Airplane off the ground. Releasing the pressure. There's the weathercock. Positive climb. Gear up. There is 15 degrees up there, probably a little bit high. Yeah, okay, maybe about 10 degrees. Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe jets pitch up a bit higher. They have a bit more thrust once they get into the air. But there we go. We are off and away into the murk. Taking off is... No pilots are... You don't tend to be as preoccupied with the takeoff in windy conditions as a landing, of course. Through 1,000 feet. Autopilot engage. It is accelerating. Let's go to condition levers 900. Speed's good. Flaps to 0. Bleeds are on and min. So let's go to on and norm. And let's go to texted waypoint number 3. Direct to 2 things to do in this airplane. We also have to tell it we want to actually do that into nav. And there we go. It's going to level off at 5,000 feet, which will be absolutely fine. Flaps are up, looking good. And there we go, through the worst of the weather already by 3,000 feet. That was default scenery, I believe. Yep, I don't have many X-plane sceneries. Yeah, that's so common, the really murky days. Beautiful. Favourite moment. Imagine you've spent all day on the ground like that, in the gloom and the murk, and then you take off and the sun shines in. That's the privilege of the job, really. There's 1,000 feet to go. It's in go-around mode, so I feel like we would definitely have selected something, so that's something I shouldn't have done. Line up the heading bug. 5,000 feet. Let's adjust it, so let's put in a new altitude. We're actually going to cruise at 24,000 feet today. Up we go. You'll notice it stays in out star. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But there we go. 24... Good. IS 210. That's the typical climb speed, and I need to press outsail or it won't level off. Going up to flight level now, so let's go to standard 29902, which is set. It won't say standard, but it is. Up the nose comes. And that 245 speed limit, which we know is from the bird strike issues at this altitude. Let's imagine we picked up a bit of ice. You'd know by looking on this spigot here. Not sure if it's simulated or not. I can't imagine it, they do. Looking pretty clean, that wing. But if you needed to break it off, if you thought you had some ice, you just set that to fast. And it would just run through a cycle of inflating those boots, which I still love. There's such a great effect. There they go, inflating. Brilliant. It would also inflate these, I believe, on the intake if we give it a second. at some point in the cycle. Oh. Maybe we missed it. Maybe they were the first. What else is there to do? Let's find out. After takeoff checklist, landing gear is up. Flaps are at 0. Climb power is set. We are at max climb, 90%. Pretty much same as takeoff, to be honest. PDA 1 and 2 on a norm. Standby high P2 control can now go off. Or norm. Tanks, pumps, just like a GA plane, off. I don't know why you can't leave them running. Auto feather off. Engine T's and P's are good. You see that oil's still cold. I don't think it would take that long to heat up, especially after takeoff. Engine T's and P's checked. Ice protection as required. Controls, passenger signs. Going to leave the passenger signs on a bit. We're at 10,000 feet, but it's pretty rough still. What we can do is get rid of the props, get rid of the boots, and even close those. Mad, isn't it? How many things there is. So if you want to properly protect this airplane from ice, you've got to do 3 things. If you want to remove it from ice, you've got to do 4. And in fact, should have turned that on as well if we thought we had ice in the airframe. This switch is a whole... I mean, there are documentaries dedicated to what the effects of this switch and what it's done, and what it does, which might not be for today. On takeoff in strong crosswind on the Airbus, the side stick, it's very simple. You do full side stick down instead of half, and that's about it. You rotate like normal. You don't put into wind aileron unless you really, really need it, because if you put in too much, you'll just put the spoilers up on that wing, and then that'll drive that side into the ground, which will actually increase the weathercocking effect and make it harder to control. Yeah, so even in the strongest crosswinds, I never find that necessary, particularly to put into wind aileron. In aircraft like this, you might, especially on landing, because if you land in this airplane in the strong crosswind like we just had, and the wind picks up underneath a wing, it could actually lift it, and I have had that happen. There you go, Matthew Presley. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, the Colgan crash, exactly. Yeah, related to that that switch. It's yeah. It's hard to describe. It basically adds, I think it's 15 to 25 knots onto your speed tape, red speeds. And that's literally all it does. So SV, thanks so much for your $10 tip. Really appreciate it. SV says, nice to see you live. Love your videos and hope you're flying more in real life. Thank you so much, SV. Really, really appreciate it. I hope you're doing very well. And thanks for donating towards the channel. I'm glad you like the videos. And flying has picked up for me. It's not back to normal, amazingly, still. And obviously, with what's happened very recently, it's actually going the opposite way again, which is slightly disheartening after all this time, but there we go. I know it's a lot of people, it's disheartening for a lot of us as well. So but yeah, thanks so much. And we are indeed at least flying, because there was a long period, 6 months of the last 12 months where we weren't flying at all. Spring of 21 was probably the worst period of it all. Joanne, you're very welcome. Thanks for the follow, Doghouse Gaming and Isbol. Thanks, Santiago. Yeah, no, it's great to be flying relatively regularly, which of course is why we have slightly less streams running at the moment. But like I say, I've got a couple of videos hopefully coming out soon. This plane will be cool if it ever makes it to Microsoft Flight Simulator, but pretty complex, says Daniel Fry. It's funny, this airplane isn't actually that complicated. What it is it's different and also not very automated. So there's more to do, but there's less going on, if that makes sense. So we have to do loads of things. But, you know, there's only 2 fuel pumps. The Airbus has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, it has at least 6 running, and depending on how many tanks you've got, more. Then it's got standby systems and all sorts. But loads of it's just automated. So all we do at the start of the day is turn on the fuel pumps, you know, or start of the flight. Same with the hydraulics. We have to sit here turning on the standby systems. In the Airbus, they're off. They turn on if they're needed. It's that simple. In fact, it's true with the Dash. The PTU will run anyway in certain... is it the PTU or the standby hide pump? If they sense a loss of pressure on one system, I think they'll actually come on automatically, but we turn them on ourselves foot approach to make ourselves feel better, I think. Should have no trouble getting up to 24,000 feet. Even at maximum weight, it's got so much performance. Never an issue. Yeah, Matthew Presley's absolutely right. There was that incident is very famous, the Colgan, because of course the had a stall and flaps were retracted and so on. All I'll say is that the Dash 8 isn't, like I said, I've said this before, it's not like the Airbus. It doesn't, as we were just saying there, it doesn't do things for you. It's not really there to protect you. It's got all the right systems. It's safe, don't get me wrong, but it's not. An Airbus in a stall is going to put the nose down. The Dash does have a stick pusher, but it's possible to override, of course. The Airbus won't let itself get into a stall, and it will put the nose down on you and add thrust if it needs to, which is quite different. So, yeah. But yeah, raising the flaps in a stall is not a great plan. David Waldron, thanks so much for the $10 Canadian dollars super chat. Really appreciate it. I hope you're doing very well. Thanks for coming along today. And yeah, if you have a message, I'll try to make sure I see it in the chat. And I apologise if I miss it. Max says you can set the D-speed switches where you want, but the airplane will do what it wants anyway. There you go. Mike's Basement is asking, have you tried doing an after-flight dual cooldown with the Pratt & Whitney NEO? Oh, no, it's not done it after the flight. I've done it before on startup. I know how to do the dual cooling when starting, but not exactly how to cool them down. No, I don't know on the shutdown. Matthew Presley says, the crash was the best thing to happen for the regional industry over here, i.e. in America. Led to better duty and rest laws, as well as high training and record-keeping standards, as well as making ATP mandatory for both pilots, what people call the 1,500-hour rule. And that has improved pay in the industry massively now that 250-hour pilots can't apply, reduce the supply of pilots. There we go. So, yeah, it's not a surprise that things changed after that incident, because it was, for those of you who don't know, this was a Dash 8 that crashed on approach, and lots of things came out of it, including how fatigued or tired the pilots potentially were due to the way they were having to commute to get to their base and the length of their duty days. Something that never gets taken into account with duty days and planning is the conditions. So today, flying on a day with 40, 50 knots of wind is obviously more tiring. And imagine doing that for 3 or 4 or 5 or even 6 flights. That is obviously more tiring than a day of perfect weather for 5 or 6 flights. But the duty limitations don't take that into account. So flying in winter is a lot different to flying in summer when you're flying around short haul like this, or regional. And the duty hours just don't take it into account. So it's up to the pilots to say they're fatigued. So that means that you're going to have to cool halfway through the day, cool up and say, well, I'm not doing any more flying, which means the plane could be stuck somewhere, or passengers are stranded and the company loses money, and they're obviously not very happy about it, because if it's legal, if it's within duty hours, they'll expect you to be doing it unless you're actually unfit or fatigued. So, you know, aviation in countries like America and the UK and Europe they're obviously got a fair safety policy and so on. So they expect you to report if you're fatigued, and then they wouldn't force you to fly, of course. So that's the reassurance for you as passengers, that option is there. But even so, it's, you know, you will be more tired after a day in the winter. And then to have to commute to a different base and so on is obviously can be quite an ask. Yes, return to live weather, good point. Let's see if we can do that quick enough. Max says, Canada has recently changed the maximum duty length to reflect the time the duty starts relative to the base time zone. So that's already a thing in Europe. Let's just put this to live weather. No. More haste, less speed. Yeah, so that's already a thing in Europe. So our duties are longer if you start after a certain time in the morning, and if you start very early in the morning or overnight, i.e. when your body's in its proper rest periods, window circadian low, it's called, which is when your body naturally has decided to shut down for the day, really, and try and recover. Any duty that interrupts that is quite restrictive on how many hours you can do. It's also restricted based on how many flights you do. So it's not just 12 hours, for example, that you can operate for, that'll be reduced. If you're doing 6 sectors, there'll be less. Lots of things like that. Mike says, it must also make a huge difference when both starting and ending your hours in darkness or dusk. Yeah, it doesn't account for that. It's an interesting point. It doesn't account for seasonality. So it's the same duty hours in winter or summer. Something I find is that I actually, I'm a bit unusual. I don't mind flying in the dark, especially if say I'm waking up early to do an early shift. I find it's more pleasant for me, just me personally, most people would disagree with this, to do the first sort of flight in the dark. Or maybe you take off in the dark and then the sun comes up. I find myself less tired on those shifts than I do in summer, where I've woken up in broad daylight, even though it's very early morning, and then I'm still sitting there with the sun shining. I find that more fatiguing over a whole day. But there you go. But it's interesting. Yeah, no, there's no accounting for the seasonality. Right, there's 1,000 feet to go. We have outsail still engaged. Worth checking because it can drop out very easily. Oh, there you go. Lauren B says that not just duty days, but the pilots weren't paid relocation. So one had commuted in from living with their parents that morning to fly out of New York. And their parents were on the West Coast. So, yeah, obviously in America, that's a big journey. That'd be like traveling all the way across Europe to fly that day, which you just wouldn't do. You wouldn't do. Ebos says, does deadheading count to the hours if needed to fly out to your first flight? So that depends. If you're doing it yourself to get to your official base of work, probably not. That means that was part of the problem. If it's a duty, i.e. you've arrived at where you're based with your airline and you're being sent somewhere, then it would count as part of your hours. You've reported for work, so you are now on duty, as it were. I think. It's not very often I have to do that. Joke says, hey, hope you're doing great. Can you please elaborate on differences between Dash and ATR? Yeah, okay. Only anecdotally, I've never flown the ATR, and I haven't flown it in a simulator. But I've obviously flown with pilots who have flown it, because Dash 8 pilots would often have experienced the other side as it is. It's like Boeing and Airbus. There you go. Deadheading before a flight counts as a duty, but keep in mind deadheading and commuting are two different things. Yeah, exactly. So deadheading, i.e. that's when an airline wants you to position to another place to bring an aeroplane back. They would that would count as part of your duty because the airline's making you do it, so it wouldn't be fair not to. You'd expect to be paid for that as well, as opposed to commuting where you're just trying to get from where you live to where you work. There's Outstar. Let's go to 850 on the RPMs. Give the passengers a bit of quiet. It does make quite a big difference. I will let them out now. It's nice and calm up here. So let's do the cruise checks. Altimeters are on standard. Power set. Cabin pressure check. Lights. Oh yeah, lights. Landing lights off. Nose light off. That's all working. And pressurization is good. Cabin 0, about 8,000 feet. 5 psi diff. Excellent news. And that's us for the cruise, really. Just got to remember to no auto thrust, so bring the power back a little bit. Thanks so much to HobbySim for the 55 sec. Really appreciate it. That's very kind. HobbySim says, you may have the question, but did not hear it. What do you think will close the airport again for COVID-19? I don't know. I hope not. I think we've seen now, and this, we don't talk much about COVID-19 on this channel because obviously this is for all of us a bit of an escape. But we've seen that travel has returned. We've seen that people are willing to travel, which is the key. People want to travel. It's a part of life now, and people are wearing the masks and going traveling. So the idea that we would all switch to Zoom calls forever or electronic calls, FaceTime and whatnot, has proven. Well, I don't have the numbers, but my guess would be it's not quite true. People aren't satisfied with a Microsoft Teams meeting as much as they are meeting people, and they're not likely to miss out on seeing family and friends to do it over a call like that. So that's good news. These variants and so on, are they going to close the airports? Who knows? It seems that every country has its own set of rules for this and its own decision making. So far it's been a relief to see that borders haven't closed, just restrictions on testing and so on, and people seem to be willing to put up with testing, thankfully. So that's fine. I mean, we've all seen that the variants have already arrived everywhere by the time any travel restrictions come into force. Hopefully we can just be sensible with the testing and get it under control, because obviously I'm all for the safety and everything like that, stopping the spread, making sure we don't have everyone in hospital is obviously very important. So yeah, I'm not going to sit here and pass my judgment on it. I don't know whether these variants will close airports in the future. It just depends how things goes, I suppose. Because the fact is, if you'd asked me before the pandemic, would anything shut all the airports around the world for months, I'd have probably said, no, I doubt it. So there we go. Rani, good to see you. Thanks for coming along. But thank you, HobbySim, for the question, and thank you for the kind donation. So ATR, Santiago says, ATR doesn't have an APU, and that's bad in hot weather, like mine. Yes, so that is the big difference. ATR has a couple of things. I've been a passenger on an ATR. It's not quite the same. It's not as equipped as the Dash 8. It's not as powerful as the Dash 8, crucially. So it suffers for performance by comparison. Not to say it's not safe. It just isn't as good as the Dash. Dash has two very big, very powerful engines with some excellent propellers, and it's the best part of this machine is the engines. They are brilliant, very powerful, very reliable, fully automatic, fully electric, very nice. The Dash 8 has an APU at the back, which when it works, and it's not necessarily always working, but when it does work, allows you to have air conditioning on the ground in hot weather or heating in cold weather. The ATR does not have that, so you'd have to find another way to pump in that air or use the GPU. The ATR can, I believe, run one engine on the off side, the right hand side where you aren't boarding passengers, and then have a propeller brake that holds the propeller still so it doesn't spin, which is quite interesting, but obviously not as efficient as having your own APU, I would imagine. So that's the big one. The second one being the performance, as we discussed, where the aircraft will not be able to climb up to its cruise altitude straight away. Sometimes it can be too heavy, so it's not always as efficient, because the Dash is obviously quite efficient, being able to climb straight up to 24,000 feet quite quickly. In terms of flying, though, the ATR has some advantages. It's quite popular with the pilots who flew it. Yeah, it's quite popular for the pilots who flew it. I don't know why. I've never flown it. Just they liked hand flying it, the ones that I met anyway. And also, it has landing gear that, unlike the Dash, is not straight into the wing spar. It's on a sort of trading link like the 146, which is nice to land on. So I think it was nicer to land. Almost every airline is nicer to land than the Dash. The Dash is very tricky, very peculiar. And I'm not saying it's tricky from a safety perspective again. I know I keep saying that today. I'll stop saying it, I promise. But the Dash is hard to get a smooth landing out of. Having said that, my smoothest ever landing was on a Dash 8. But the ATR, a bit nicer to land, softer landing gear. Lauren V says the ATR overhead rather looks like an Airbus. Yeah, it's more modern, perhaps in some senses. Yeah, and cheaper to maintain, perhaps. Matthew Presley says the longer this goes, the more flying boxes sounds good to me. More job security in boxes. Indeed, yeah. So cargo flying is not suffered as much, or in fact has increased during the pandemic. So that is the place to go. No worries, HobbySim. No worries at all. Thanks. I do miss questions a lot. Max says smoothest landing ever in a queue. Must have been heavy and the runway wet. I think it was pretty heavy. I remember it well. It was that good. It was one of those landings where, and I'm not trying to take credit for this, like it was my skill that did it. It was just a normal landing that went well. Yeah, it was just funny. It was flat 15, because you wouldn't get that on flat 35, but a flat 15 landing in a Dash 8 where the winds were just right and you just set it up in the right place, and you just couldn't feel it. We didn't really know we were on the ground until the spoilers came up, and then I knew to put it to flight idle. Part of the advantage of landing with power is that you can almost fly along level with the runway, and the airplane isn't losing speed, it's not losing height, because of course, as I said, we landed with power flat 15, whereas the Airbus is idle. So if you put the Airbus into a normal flare and put it in the right position for landing, it is always losing energy because the thrust levers are back, unless you get a big gust of wind or something, but it's essentially losing energy. So to try and maintain level flight like that is harder, but it does require the perfect conditions in the Dash, and there's lots of reasons it won't work out, and you can do the same thing over and over again and you'll get rattly landings and smooth ones. Is there such thing as a perfect landing? That's a good question. Probably. A smooth landing is not necessarily a perfect landing. Hasu says, any Toliss streams planned? You know, this stream was almost in the 340 600, almost, but I was all set up for the Dash 8, and this was a bit of a last minute thing, so Dash 8 we went with. But yep, Toliss will be back soon. Don't you worry. Max says, I had one of those super smooth landings, then the ground spoilers came up. Yeah, exactly. Because the airplane, the dash just doesn't sink onto its oleos. That's why you need such smooth landings, to make it feel smooth. Robin Klein says the ATR also has an auto detent on the conditioning units. There you go. Didn't know that. Very good. Evening, Mark S. I hope you're doing well. My 2 cents says APU jokes. I worked for Porter, Canada. I think our APU worked fine for the most part. Very good. St John's to Halifax would be overkill for the A340, says Igloo Foo. Indeed it would, but I debated it. Daniel Fry asks which airport I typically fly out of. I'll keep that to myself just for a bit of privacy. So sorry, Daniel, but yeah. I am in the UK though. I think I've said that. I have said that many times actually, so I can reveal that. Last Edge says, hi, never seen you fly this thing live. Hope you're well. I am well. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for joining us on Twitch. And yeah, this will be our 3rd stream in the Dash. I hope you guys aren't too bored of Dash 8 streams, but I couldn't resist it. I'm having a real flashback and enjoying it quite a lot. So I spent many hours looking at that view. Yeah, Daniel. Yep, Daniel. The accent does give that away. Valid says, do you think the flaps on the FlyJSim generate a bit less lift than they're supposed to? In some videos, it's at 4 to 5 degrees pitch at VREF plus 5. I thought you carry the extra 5 knots to avoid that. Yeah, I mean, I can't say I felt that too much, because we would typically fly at plus 5, and we would have a degree or 2 spare for landing, if that. I'll keep an eye out for it. Possibly a bit, but landing at, having the pitch at 4 to 5 degrees is just where it would be on final. Any sort of strong winds, gusts, and you run out of room to flare, and that's part of the reason I preferred flap 35 in windy conditions. So I don't. If there is a little too, if the lift isn't quite right, it's not by much. Put it that way. Kai is back. Starting the food discussion. I had homemade bread, rosemary garlic, and some homemade spaghetti bolognese. That does sound very nice. I'll be having pizza tonight, so I am allowed to say that. Dexter says, do you think, well, with the return of Flybe, do you think you'll move back to the Dash 8? That's a good question. I won't answer that one. What I will say is there are some aircraft and type ratings. So as a pilot, you are an asset to the airline, but also, of course, they have to pay you. If the airline fails, you need to, and airlines do fail, as we see, you need to position. The dream for a pilot is to obviously get picked up by another airline, preferably doing the same thing or as near as to where you live as possible. The problem with flying aircraft like the Dash 8, and it's not necessarily a problem, but if you are type rated on the Dash 8, that means airlines that also fly the Dash 8 are the most likely ones to recruit you. They're the ones that will want you. Because if you run an airline and you have an option, you have 2 pilots, both the same number of hours flying, they both do great in interviews. One of them is already trained to fly the airplane you fly, and the other one will need £15,000 spent on them and an extra 2 months of training before they can fly the aircraft. Which one are you going to choose? So obviously you're more marketable with a type of the airline that you want to work for. So if you want to fly from the airports that Dash 8s are used in, and you have lots of Dash 8 operators around, then a Dash 8 is a great type rating to have. But that's not necessarily always the case. So you have to think about where your where the market is in where you are in the world. Put it that way. No, I haven't seen a QRH for this Dash 8. No. Max says, I wonder if some viewers here might appreciate your take on some of the QRH procedures for more common faults such as ice detect fail. Yeah, so the Dash 8, unlike the Airbus, has an ice detector. It will actually read in yellow down here, ice detected, as well as having the visual spigot here. The Airbus doesn't have that. It's an option, which I did find amazing when I came onto the Airbus. I later found out why. It's because the Dash 8 is more susceptible to icing. It's more likely to pick up ice. It flies more commonly in the ice weather or icing conditions. So as you can see here, we're actually pretty close to this cloud layer, and we can't go up any higher. We could go 1,000 feet higher, worst case, but we could find ourselves going back into the cloud. And some days in the Dash, you'd sit in cloud the whole day, which is not much fun, I can tell you. It's the complete opposite of that beautiful view we have here. When you take off and you sit in a grey bubble all day, it can almost be claustrophobic. If you compare it to an office, imagine an office where the walls are, an inch, a few inches from your head in each direction, and you're just sat there with that grey wall right in front of you, rattling around, and in turbulence often as well in clouds. So that was the downside. Whereas jet aircraft, obviously, Airbus straight up get above it, 30,000 feet and above, you tend to have less of it. So anyway, there's more chance of ice, so it's more important that the pilots are aware they have ice. The Airbus flies higher, less time in icing conditions, faster, picks up less ice when it's in ice, and also has a heated wing when it needs it, so it's generally more capable of dealing with it. I have flown in Dash 8s where this window's heated, this window's heated, and this window's heated, but this one over here is not. And I've seen it where ice builds up on this window, and then it starts to build up on this window, and then it starts to build up on these. And I've been flying in icing conditions where ice is built up on the windows, even though they're heated. Never seen that on the Airbus. It just shows you the sort of conditions the Dash gets into. It also builds up on these spinners here quite heavily. So I remember looking out the window and seeing an ice disc, big white disc appearing on the front of the propeller, and therefore we had to try and get out of it. You start to feel rattling as well as it builds up on the ice blades, and that's where it can eventually break off when it gets heavy enough and hit this ice shield here. So passengers start hearing thuds in the cabin, which is not the most reassuring thing, as you can imagine. I'm glad my microphone wasn't off for that rant. John says, did you ever experience ice from the prop system in the fuselage? I think I did, but it's actually rarer than you think. It doesn't happen too often. Yaw damper. What does the yaw damper do? So we need the yaw damper on for the autopilot to work. Apparently. I thought. Oh, well, maybe not. So what does the yaw damper do? Well, there's the autopilot off. Yaw damper is common on aircraft, slightly out of trim there. It's common on aircraft with swept wings actually, but the Dash 8 also has one. Airbus has it, but there's no separate switch for it. Again, why do we even have that switch? We want the yaw damper on. I want the airplane to tell me if it's broken, but there's no situation where we turn it off that I'm aware of. When you disconnect the autopilot, you just disconnect the autopilot. The yaw damper is there because of a thing called Dutch roll. That's where it first came about. I've tried to describe this before on the channel and got it wrong. It's more common in swept wing aircraft, and what happens is any instability in yaw, so the nose of the airplane goes left or right, actually pushes one of the wings more into the airflow, and therefore it generates more lift, and it raises. No, that can't be right. It's an instability inherent in some aircraft's design. It's to do with yaw. So any sort of upset on the yaw, and the airplane will start to oscillate basically. If you do nothing, it'll sit there and it will rock one way then the other. And it's called Dutch roll, and it's to do with the way the wings are being presented to the air and all sorts. I can't believe I've failed to describe that again. Anyway, yaw dampers are there because of that gentle yawing motion that will be going on. What the yaw damper does is it sits there and it counteracts that. So for the whole flight, even without the autopilot, the rudder would just be doing ever so slight adjustments to make sure that the nose of the airplane doesn't start to get into this oscillation. That's what it's for. It's on mostly swept wing aircraft, but also obviously we have one here, and it's quite a common thing. Airbus has it. But yeah, so there you go. So that's roughly what the yaw damper is there for, and it typically has to be there so that the autopilot will work as well. I'm surprised the autopilot didn't disconnect when I disengaged the yaw damper there, because I think if the yaw damper is broken, you couldn't use the autopilot on the dash. Pretty sure. Roy says, just get type rated on all the popular airliners. Yeah, that's the answer. Wojtek says, I'm enjoying your dash content, and as a passenger, I love to see seat under the wings and observe the landing gear retracting and extending. Yeah, it's good. Very fast on the dash as well. Very fast. Hey, Max Epic Blocks, good to see you. And Amari, thanks for joining us. Matthew says, I believe your dash has the same ice detector. Oh, sorry. Matthew says, guy who taught my new higher systems class was told when he was new to the line to hold the ice detector to test it as a joke. Still has a scar. Yeah, you wouldn't want to do that. So the ice detector sits there and it actually vibrates. And I'll show you. You can see it in the model, I think. I'm sure you can. This is one of the best visual models available for any sim. There it is. That's the ice detector. So it sits there and it's a cylinder and it vibrates, and if ice builds on it, it doesn't vibrate at the same frequency, and that's how it tells you it has ice. Very clever, very simple. It's quite an elegant solution. Look at that wind blowing us across. Rant received loud and clear as a checkpoint. Excellent. Lust Judge says, I've never flown on the Dash, but it sounds like a very memorable experience. Yeah, it's good fun. If you're into your aircraft, flying on the Dash 8 is good fun, especially if you can get a seat near the wheels. Quite unique. Or the propeller, but it'll be noisier by the propeller. The quieter seats in the Dash are at the very back. Or it's okay at the very front, but the quietest at the back. Thanks, Simran. Glad you've been enjoying them. Dutch roll, we're still on the food talk, says Lauren B. Yeah. You're welcome, York. I do fly DCS Hobby Sim. I do. It's been a while, but I do. Max says, just got out of recurrent. My legs and ankles are sore from all the V1 cuts. Which aircraft was that on, Max? Is that are you on the Dash 8 now? The Dash 8. So V1 Fartos. I've done a video on a Fartos on the channel, talking about the Airbus. I show the A320 Farto. You need rudder pedals really to simulate it at home. The Farto engine failure after takeoff, it's called, is when you have an engine failure at decision speed V1 and the engine shuts down, and then you have to get into the air using one engine only. It takes a huge amount of control deflection to make it work, because you have asymmetric power, you've got not much airflow over the controls, so you need a lot of power. The Dash 8 is one of the hardest aircraft to do it in, because you get three effects to make it harder in a Dash 8. First of all, they're very powerful engines. So the live engine is giving a lot of power, which is obviously trying to, let's say this number one engine over here fails. If this fails on takeoff, this engine here will drag the nose to the left. It will push the nose, or sorry, it will push the nose around. So that's got to be counteracted with rudder. Secondly, these big propellers, look how much of the wingspan they take up. There's all the wing generating lift, and then you've got this area. I don't know what percentage it is, but this whole area here is getting lift not from airflow from flying, like normal, like a jet aircraft. It actually gets its airflow from the propellers as well. So it gets extra lift as this propeller blows air over that part of the wing. So even when you're stationary, if you add a load of power to the Dash 8, sitting on the ground with a parking brake on, you're still getting lift generated by this part of the wing because you're blasting air over it. So when one engine fails, you lose that lift. So you lose not just the airspeed, but a whole chunk of lift on this wing. So that wing drops down. So you've got to counteract that as well. Finally, the propeller is a huge, great propeller, and if it loses power and it's trying to maintain its RPM, it'll actually turn into a windmill, and it uses the airflow to try and spin. Now, that's why we have auto feather on takeoff. If that engine failed now, that propeller would try and spin at 850, and we'll have to feather it ourselves. But on takeoff, we use a system called auto feather, which will sense the loss in power, and it will just immediately feather that propeller because it's so crucial. If it doesn't, you'll really struggle to get the airplane into the air. So that's why that system's there. It's absolutely crucial. And there are memory items on the Dash 8 for an engine failure that involve feathering the engine because it's so important. So yeah, those are 3 effects that you don't get on jet aircraft. On the jet aircraft, the wings don't get their lift from the prop wash or the jet wash, so you don't lose that lift on that wing. It's getting the same amount of lift as normal. You also don't have such a big swing typically because the power is not so strong from the live engine because you derate normally. And finally, you don't have any feathering issue. The airplane, the jet engines don't. They do produce a bit of drag, a completely shut off jet engine, but it's nowhere near as bad as a propeller. Nowhere near. Right, that was a big. Yeah, my microphone was on for that one. That rant about fartos. Thanks so much for the £4.49 donation, Clark. I really appreciate it. Clark says, last stream someone asked what you do with an unruly passenger. I appreciate you couldn't answer, but I was curious as to the reason why you couldn't answer. So thanks so much for the £4.49 donation. Really appreciate it, Clark. And thanks very much for coming along and supporting the channel. So the reason I can't talk about, I don't talk on the channel about security related things, put it that way, for just the reason that it's not appropriate to talk about. It also could be specific to certain airlines or countries, and also anything that's safety related like that I won't discuss, just because it's not really appropriate for everyone to know, I suppose. So that's the reason why, just to maintain the integrity of the safety and security operation. So that's why. But thanks very much for the donation, really appreciate it. John says, yeah, DCS, get the Tomcat out of the hangar. Yes, I should. No, DCS is on the list, maybe in a couple of days, maybe. Max is on the Q400. Excellent, Max. So you can get everything I get wrong out of here. But that's why, so Max mentioned V1 cuts, which is the engine failing at V1. And the reason it's so hard in the Dash, for those 3 reasons I gave you there, was why you have to put in a whole load of rudder, and it's got a huge rudder, and you need a whole load of aileron as well, which you don't need on the Airbus. A whole load of aileron to get it right. And the yaw damper coordinates the turns, says Robin Klein. Yeah, it doesn't actually coordinate turns in the Dash 8. I don't think. Oh, I don't remember now. The Airbus coordinates turns because of normal law, not the yaw damper. Does the yaw damper coordinate the turn? I suppose it does a bit. Yeah. I don't remember having to use rudder in turns in the Dash, only when changing power. But that is the irony of the Dash 8's yaw damper, is if I turn off the autopilot and change power, so I turn it off, the yaw damper is still engaged. You can see there, yaw damper. But it doesn't actually correct the side slip. There you go, we're actually banking. So, yeah, it's a bit of avionics magic, really. Lauren B says, I'd love a Manta Squadron group flight in Microsoft Flight Simulator now that everyone has a fast jet. Yes, if we don't have a livery for the F-18 yet, do we? But I'm thinking perhaps a group flight to Lapland in F-18s. That could be a bit of fun, couldn't it? That's what I was thinking. Kai says, I did an engine failure after V1 in an A320 in Innsbruck, which wasn't a good idea, but we landed safely 30 minutes later. Excellent, Kai. Yeah, it's the A320 is one of the better aircraft, definitely, for it. The A320, if you've gotten into the air, as long as you're in the air and you have an engine failure, even if you did nothing with the rudder or the ailerons, it will just fly away with a bit of bank and a bit of a turn. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Wojtek, thank you so much, CYVR, for your $5 Canadian dollar super chat. Very appropriate. Wojtek says, I also like when you dress your Dash in a Canadian livery. Excellent. I know, I really like this livery, and I definitely wanted to use it. I'm hoping we'll see a 340-600 in this one, but I also like Air Canada's newest livery, so I do want to use that as well. But thanks so much for that donation. Really appreciate it, Wojtek. Very kind. Thanks for coming along today and supporting the channel. Four Prawn says, really interesting stream as always. Do you have to worry about prop synchronization, or does the Dash do it automatically? Automatic in the Dash. Yeah, great question. So in lots of turboprops, things like, I'm not sure about the King Air, but the Twin Otter and so on, you'd synchronize it yourself, or you'd use an auto sync system. The Dash 8, that is all built in and automated. All we're doing with these condition levers is just telling it I want 850 RPM, 900 and max. And we're also telling it what rating we want the rating to be at. So max cruise, because we're in the cruise detent of 850. Yeah, absolutely no synchronizing. If I was to move this a little bit, Yeah, you see that? We can't actually fine-tune. I can't, unlike the power levers and the Airbus or anything, I can't actually start selecting individual RPMs. This is basically a switch. It's just an electronic switch. Yeah. So that's it. They do it themselves. Crash Ed, Ed Hassan, good to see you. Ed says, bit late to the stream tonight, but great to catch some of it live. Hope you're well. I'm all well. Thanks very much for coming along, Ed. I hope you're doing very well as well. Positive Rate says, remember flying the Q400 from City to Exeter with Flyby back in the day. Such a cool plane. There you go, yeah. London City. We'll have to take the Dash to London City. I don't know why I haven't done that yet. Does it have the steep approach button? Flat 35, GPWS. Steep. There it is, yeah. So we could do that. That is tempting. That is very tempting. Alex says, do you have a link to your mods for Flight Simulator? I don't, but that's something I should probably set up. Iglafu says, I was re-watching all of your old streams and got to the Tomcat stream. I have DCS now, and man, I am really struggling, but over 200 hours in a few weeks. Yeah, DCS is like that. It took me ages to get going in the F-14. I think I must have put 4 or 5 hours in before I got it into the air for the first time. But I'll tell you what, it was super satisfying, and it's stuck. You know, I remember the F-14. I've tried the F-18 and F-16, and I've struggled to remember them. I forget it because I don't try them enough, whereas the F-14 I'm doing better on. No worries, Lemon Clark. No worries at all. Julia says, have you tried and what do you think about P3D V5 Flight Sim Labs Airbuses? So, I've never used P3D. I had FSX. I looked at P3D years ago, but P3D, you know, there's no personal license for it. It's a commercial educational license, so that's why I never bought it really. So I've just not tried them. I did try them on a friend's computer, and they were very good. And you can of course buy it for Flight Simulator, but when I got to the stage where I was going to have to look at buying the FS Labs Airbus, it was a lot of money, and I decided I couldn't really justify it. So yeah, so I haven't tried them. Lauren V says, Paddy says he's definitely going to do a Manta Squadron livery for the F-18. That'll be great. I can't wait to see that. Paddy's obviously excellent at liveries. So that'd be good fun. So if we can get that, and we'll get, yeah, okay, I need to coordinate that. I need to spend some time flying it, actually. I haven't used the F-18 at all. Maybe I'll do that on a late night Twitch stream at some point. Kai says, without the captain we'd have hit the hotel because we didn't put enough rudder in. Yeah. So the Airbus, you need to get that rudder in on the runway still. That is always tricky. My 2 cents said, your damper do not coordinate turn in sense other planes do. It only dampens the oscillation. So when you change power, you have to use rudder. Exactly, yeah, that's what I thought. Good stuff. John Pav was planning to take Concorde to London City. Excellent. Domino says, what is your favourite airport to fly to in real life? I couldn't pick one. I've got a few I like, though, which long-time followers of the channel will know. And you can probably sense them from the streams, but I don't. And by the way, just because I like flying somewhere doesn't mean I currently fly there or currently do not fly there. I've flown to obviously lots of different airports from the different places I've worked over the years, so yeah, but a few have come up a few times. You often see Athens and Ljubljana, they appear on the channel quite regularly. Venice. Those are some ones I quite like. Geneva's alright. It's quite a beautiful view and the weather's nice. I try not to get too specific though. Positive Rate says, the academic license for P3D is what I had. Only use X-Plane now. Might have to get P3D and the FS Labs for my APS MCC with my ATPL. Oh yeah, there you go. It's still very expensive though because it's P3D plus the cost of the FS Labs. But yeah, it is obviously a very good add-on. Checkpoint says, I actually installed the Twitch app to get notified of random streams and feeding zookeepers to dinosaurs. Can't wait for it. Excellent, thanks Checkpoint. Yeah, so that's those ones I'll probably announce them on the Discord, but that I won't be announcing them more than 5 minutes before they go online. The sort of the Twitch streams where I'm just messing around, trying to learn a new airplane or something. No, don't worry, Max, you didn't miss anything. Rome a few times on the channel, says Lauren V. Yeah, Rome is a nice one. The arrival into Rome is good, yeah, and the actual ILS is pretty uneventful, but the arrival's nice, yeah, over the hills. Turin is a good one, actually. I don't think we've been there on the channel. Matthew says, once Leonardo's Mad Dog comes to Microsoft Flight Simulator, I'll probably uninstall P3D. So that would be an MD-80. I didn't know one was coming. Very good. Sorry about that. I was just enjoying a mince pie. It's that time of year. We're back onto the mince pies. Yeah, Domino says, great answer. Thanks. Gives me a few ideas for routes. Palma has come up a few times. Yeah, Palma has. I would recommend Ibiza, probably, over Palma in terms of flying into. I think Ibiza's a really nice approach. Pearl UK says, can we do a video about doing an RNAV approach with the Q4XP? Okay. Like I say, a landing video is coming soon. But RNAVs. I think we did a RNAV on the last stream, didn't we? So if you're just wondering how to fly one, you could look on the last stream. I think it's pretty simple. You just set it up in the box. And I think we pressed LNAV VNAV. Thanks, Pearl UK. Glad you liked it. But yeah, a video for that could be a possibility. Ed says the Just Flight BA146 from Microsoft Flight Simulator is also looking great. Yes, it is, and I love that 146 for X-Plane. So I'm excited to get it in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Just Flight have really been on a roll with their Microsoft add-ons. They've done a great job converting them, and yeah, I'm a big fan of that 146, and I'm excited because it's an airliner that I actually know how to fly. I mean in the loosest sense of the term, in the sense that I can turn it on and start it up and take it off and cruise around a little bit, because it took me a long time to learn it for X-Plane, but I did quite a few videos with it, and we streamed it recently. I think it's one of the more recent streams on the channel because I really like it. Good fun, unique sort of aeroplane. Jumbolina. Lauren likes Barcelona landing on runway 25. Okay, interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. I haven't heard that much, but you do fly right past the city. It's beautiful. Max says, if the winds stay the way we are, we can do RNAV Yankee onto 3-2 via Menbo. Yeah, okay, we'll see what happens. Yeah, I'll have to have a look at the weather shortly. Busy chatting for now. It's a shame terrain doesn't work. I don't know why the terrain map... Is this... Does anyone know? Is the terrain map coming? It should be down here. I think we should say terrain, weather, data. So we press data, it will... change what we see. Airports, nav and airports, that's what we get. So let's have nav and airports. There's not a lot around here. We're basically over the sea, I think. Thanks, Gene, for the subscription. Ed says that, yeah, Just Flight aircraft just seem to be getting better and better. Yeah, their Hawk was... The Hawk from Microsoft Flight Simulator is very, very good, and I think that's probably pretty clear from the videos I did with it. Yeah, very good. Max says, I have a thing for the RNAV Arc to Final. Yep, very nice. Quite time consuming. Max, you can talk us through the non-precision if we do it. As far as I'm aware, it's you load it into the box and then you fly in nav mode and then VNav as you get closer. Is that right? I think that's all I remember doing with it. It's one of those things that's very simple, but then takes ages to get approved and retrained on. Birdman says, do you still use the Thrustmaster Airbus joystick? Today I am using the Thrustmaster TCA pack, yes. I only use the Thrustmaster throttle quadrant with the add-ons. That's all I've got for all my aircraft. But now for the Airbus, I have, on my last stream, switched to the Winwing A320XX with the Super Libra base. I think somebody asked me earlier, what do I think of it? And I've shown it to a few other pilots now, and we all seem to be on the same line of thought that it is surprising. No, not surprising. It is very good. It's not really comparable to the Thrustmaster TCA because it is totally a different aiming point. It is much more expensive. Sorry about that. Yeah, it is much more expensive. It doesn't have all the same controls. There's no yaw axis. There's no throttle on it. There is a hat switch which you can choose to have or not, and then there's a disconnect button and the trigger, and that's it. You know, there's no extra buttons on it. So I wouldn't want to use it to fly other aircraft, but I think for flying the Airbus, I used it for the A320NX and it felt brilliant. I was so pleased with it. Yeah. VPAR, there we go, thanks Max. Hendrik says, what are your thoughts on the Airbus projects for Microsoft Flight Simulator, the DFD 350, the fly-by-wire A380 and the Headwind A330 NEO? How is the 330 NEO? People seem to like it when it came out. I haven't tried it. DFD 350, I don't know what that is. Fly-by-wire 380, I'm sure will be excellent from what we've seen so far. I'm confident in the fly-by-wire team from there. That they have the track record to show that they know what they're doing. Positive rate, the joystick I'm talking about there was the Winwing A3XX grip. Birdman said, thanks, I just bought one last week. Which one did you buy, Birdman? Max says, DTO, VTO on the star. It's a close star that will take you right onto the Isle of Yankee. The approach will auto-arm. Yeah, there we go. So it does auto-arm, and then before the FAP, it should go from VPAR to VAP. Very good. Thanks very much, Max. We'll give it a go. Doghouse says, so I have dabbled into Microsoft Flight Simulator, the new one, but I'm now about to start to get into X-Plane. What controls do you recommend to start with? That's a big question, the Doghouse. Sorry, there's what controls to start with X-Plane. It will all depend on budget and what you're going to fly, I suppose. Lauren V says, also excited about Synaptics A220 partnering with fly-by-wire. Will be nice to see one of them in a sim. Yes, the Synaptic A220 is looking very nice. I'm excited to see that one come along. Yeah, very good. And someone earlier said that, completely changing the topic to racing. Max says, you're in terrain mode there, but you might not have the database. Yeah, I think it's in ops, or did I need to download it? Do other people have a terrain display here? So Kyle says, anyone excited that iRacing adding the F1 Mercedes car today? That is exciting. I don't have iRacing, but that would be great. Manos says, A220 is coming to Microsoft Flight Simulator open source like fly-by-wire. Very good. Very good indeed. Yeah, that'd be something different for sure. Let's have a bit of a check of our systems. Fuel. Still got 4 tons. Plenty of fuel. It just sips fuel. It's amazing. All this time we've barely burned 800 kilos. Don't need the engines. Don't need the doors. Electrics? Don't think there's anything to look at. I don't routinely remember checking all these systems like the Airbus because you sit on nav and this is basically a cruise page. You've got all the engine parameters, fuel, outside air temperature. Yeah, that's about it. You'll notice the oil temperature limit has actually dropped. Maybe because of the power setting. Didn't change at end top. You wouldn't obviously move the condition levers around quite so freely in flight. Birdman says, I got the TCA side stick. Is that the same as you described? So I've got the TCA side stick, and I was describing the one that everyone was so impressed with is the Wingwing A3XX. The TCA side stick is very good. I've used it for, well, since I had it. It's very versatile. Yeah, there you go. Lauren's got the right word. And it's great for all levels. It's great for all airplanes as well, because it's got 2 buttons that I always use for trim. So I've got a trim assigned. Here we go. We're entering the cloud now. That's quite a strange picture. Let's go. Open the intake. Props on. Yeah, so... no, it's excellent. It's excellent. But yeah, the Wingwing is much more accurate to the real aircraft side stick. Being that I think the shape is incredible. The materials as well. But the TCA one I've used for all this time, and it's excellent. You've got the twist, you've got the throttle, you've got the red disconnect buttons, so I like it a lot. I'm assuming no one watching has the Thrustmaster Boeing stuff yet, because I haven't seen that. I'm curious to see how that compares to their Airbus product, but it's £500, which is a little bit expensive for me to purchase just to take a look. I suppose I could eBay it later. Lauren Reed says, excited to see Matthew Presley and 320 Sim Pilot have their take on the A220. It's a little bit like their aircraft was smooshed together with a 787. Yeah, the 220 does look very nice, and the cockpit looks nice. Looks suspiciously Airbus-like, but now it is an actual Airbus, so why not? FlyJSim has got his. It seems pretty good. There you go. Thanks, Chris. Pearl UK uses the Honeycomb Alpha. Love it, but not cheap. Yes. Yes. Yeah, the Honeycomb stuff always gets very good reviews. I'm not sure about the Thrustmaster Boeing stuff. My desk sits quite high, so I wonder how it would even fit. Because it looks like it would be quite high up, but I don't know. Guy says, FlyJSim plus 320 Sim Pilot when? Nothing immediately. Nothing immediately, I'm afraid. This has got to be my favourite view. Love it. Well, we passed the halfway point. Took a bit of time. Thanks to that headwind. Carlos, thanks for the subscription. Pody cases, I've seen a streamer use it and it was underneath his desk. No idea how that works. There you go. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's what I suspect would have to happen. Jersey Paul says, could swap with FlyJSim temporarily. He's been airbusing. Oh, we should have jumped in the Boeing today, should we? 7-3. Kai says, I'm deciding what to get for Christmas. Good to see you, Kai. This plane, Q400 or the INI A300? Oof. That's a decision I can't make for you. I mean, you know what I would say. You know what I would say. So I think we're getting there now, really. What's the arrival time meant to be? Yeah, about less than an hour to go. So let's take a look at where we're going. Done the cruise checklist. Next will be the descent. Thank you, St. John's. That was all very nice. Enjoyed that. And we're going to go to CYHZ. Halifax. Right. Let's just see. We're still on Unicom. Yeah, there's no controller here at all. It says the Honeycomb Bravo is excellent. There you go. There's another one. Max says, I wish the queue had a table. Yep, the table is the most immediate lifestyle change that the Airbus gives you when you what if you transfer to the Airbus and not the 737. I mean, yeah, the table is great. I remember, obviously I flew the Dash for a while, and then I moved to the Airbus. And one day I was sitting on the Airbus, and I had the table out, and the food was there. So I had some, I think it was cheese. So I was slicing the cheese on the table because I was trying to put it into a sandwich. Nothing fancy, don't get me wrong, it's not fancy. But I remember sitting there slicing the cheese on the table thinking, well, it just suddenly hit me how impossible this would have been to do on the Dash. And yeah, it's great. And for paperwork alone, when you just have a table folded out and you can just write straight onto the table, just a joy. On the aircraft on the Dash, you'd have a knee board. So you probably A4 being an airline. So you'd have your it's like a rigid, like a clipboard with your flight plans on it, and then you have to sort of tuck it out of the way when you're not using it. But you can't see it here because I've hidden them. But that is just such that is in your personal space the entire day. And it's a big yoke on the Dash. It is big. I don't think there's anything specific to tell you. TCS, so that is how the 146 is flown. What's the T stand for? Something control steering. Why don't I remember that? The Airbus doesn't have this feature. What this is if you press that button, you effectively touch control steering. What you're doing is you're disconnecting the autopilot, but when you let go, it will re-engage. So say you're climbing in vertical speed mode, you can press TCS, adjust the aircraft a bit, and then let go, and it will return into its vertical speed mode. That's what that's for. These are obviously your trim switches, so you need to move both at once. Very important that they don't run on their own, so that's why there's two switches to make sure you definitely want to do it. If it does do a trim runaway, there's a procedure, but also you'll actually hear a click, so you get the aeroplane makes a click 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 noise to warn you that that's going on. This is your transmit, so interphone, you push in to talk to each other, and you push out to talk to air traffic, outside the airplane to talk outside. On this side, is it the same on that side? Don't remember. But yeah, ATC ident is on the yoke, which is pretty cool. You don't see that very often, certainly not on the Airbus. So that is if they say squawk ident, you can just press that. Doesn't seem functional here. Clipboard for your charts, when they were paper charts, would go there. And the magic of that was you had a light above here, which you could then turn on to light up your charts there. Control wheel steering. That's it. Control wheel steering is what it's often called on the 737. So Lauren V, yeah, absolutely, control wheel steering. Tactile control steering, says Max. Thank you very much. Yeah, tactile control steering. I am indeed on FlyJSim, Maxwell. Willie Canuck, good to see you. Luke says, so when one pilot is contacting ATC, they won't be able to hear each other. They will, because you'll be transmitting and it will put that through the audio. So as long as you're listening to both box 1 and 2, you'll hear them. But I think the interphone, hot mic, there you go, hot mic on and off. So I'm trying to remember now. Max, please remind me. On the Airbus, when we have the interphone on, there's no hot mic option. So the interphone's either on or it's off, or you're transmitting using that little radio panel. But basically, when the interphone is on, both pilots' microphones are permanently open. So when they talk, you can hear it, but when they're not talking, you just get sort of background hiss. Not too loud, depending on how good your headsets are. In general aviation aircraft, that's not how it works. When the interphone is on, normally what happens is you have to talk, and when the system senses you talking, it will open up your microphone. That's the hot mic term. On the Dash, I can't remember which one of those it is. I have a funny feeling you'd leave it in hot mic so you could hear each other all the time without having to transmit. Because if you have hot mic off, like that, to talk to each other, you'd have to push in on the interphone, which is, I think, what Boeings do. Yeah, okay. There's confirmation from Max. Hot mic is where the mics are open. You hear everything. When it's off, you need to use the interphone. That's the one. So that's pretty similar to the Airbus. I'm sure there's some Boeings where... I've spoken to people who've flown Boeings where you'd have to actually transmit to talk to each other all the time. Luke says, imagine pushing it the wrong way. Exactly, yeah. So that's why you just fly with the hot mics. You wouldn't dream of making your life more complicated and having a discussion with the outside world instead. There's no squelch. That's the term, squelch. Thanks, Max. No squelch like on a GA interphone. Yeah, exactly like the Airbus. Andy, good to see you, Andy H1302. I hope you're doing well. Does the yoke also have a trigger for the radio? Or only that on the front? No, there's nothing behind the yoke. So it's just the push to talk up here. You got another one down here. No, you don't. Yes, you do. Here on the tiller. This is push in to talk. So the captain has two, one on the tiller, one up here, and the FO has one on the yoke, and there's another transmit switch there. Guys, really testing my memory this. Max, there you go. Thanks, Max. And I think captain on the tiller sides. Patrick Crane, thanks so much for the $20 Canadian donation. That's really very kind. Patrick says, it's great to see you flying in Canada again. I live in St. John's and fly this route often for work. Love the videos. Help me learn how to fly the A320 on Microsoft Flight Simulator. Patrick, thanks so much for the $20 Canadian donation. That's really very kind. I'm glad you like the videos. And that's great that we've got someone who we're flying the route. So we've got quite a large Canadian following on the channel. So yeah, so that's very kind. Thanks so much, Patrick. Really appreciate it. And I'm glad the videos have helped. And thanks for supporting the channel. And is it really that windy where you are? If it is, I hope your windows are sealed and your roof is staying on, because it was pretty windy when we left. But thanks so much. Really very kind. Yeah, very generous. Well, Halifax, speaking of windy, is currently 280. 17, gusting 30, gusting 23. That's all right. That's all right. Even if that's all across, we can do it. 15 statutory miles viz. Temperature 6. QNH, although they don't call it that. Altimeter 2980. Okay, so let's pick an approach. Oh, well, let's have a look at the airport. What is the options? Okay, so any of the runways. They're all long enough. We're coming in by Lerla, which is going to drop us off at Lerla. Okay. Then we need to choose our approach. So wind is 280, so westerly. So, well, that'd only be 40 degrees off of 3.2, wouldn't it? So that's going to be our best option. Just about, but also 2.3 would be an option. Yeah, thank you again, Patrick. Very, very generous. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so in Boeing's it's possible to transmit outside. There you go, by accident. Yeah, the Airbus is pretty good. You'd have to have a stuck microphone to accidentally transmit your conversation to the outside world. I've heard a few over the years, and we've all transmitted stuff we didn't mean to. But yeah, nothing too shocking. Willie Canuck says, I'll be flying on a Dash 8 again as a passenger next year once Fly becomes online again. Eddie to Birmingham. Excellent. Yeah, it's great news, isn't it? Paul Prawn says, as someone who struggled with the first Microsoft Flight Simulator loaded on tape, I can't believe the kit we can get to use at home. Pounds permitting. Well, and also, I think, look at what we have now available to us compared to 6 or 7 years ago. Because the Flight Sim hardware market, oof, there's a wind loading. The Flight Sim hardware market was just, was very quiet for a long time. Yeah, so it's all changed recently. Right, so we've got an RNAV onto 3.2. think that's what Max wanted us to do. Let me just check that there's no control. No, there's no control there at all. Other options for 3-2 are 0. We've got RNAV Yankee and RNAV Zulu. So Gabat, Vokil. Oh, starting the descent slightly before 3.8. Oh, I'd hope it would do that. In the Airbus, I'd know how to check exactly what it would do, but not so easy on this one. 3-degree approach to the runway, wind from the left. This seems like a sensible approach, or we could just do an RNS. What would you? Oh, I know. Those of you on YouTube, I'm going to run a vote. Sorry to those of you on Twitch. I don't know how to do a vote on Twitch. I'm sure it's possible. What was the other runway? I've already forgotten. Okay. Yeah. When I just do Twitch streams, I'll do votes on there. But I've just posted a little poll onto YouTube. And you can vote for which approach we're going to fly. Lima is going to land on 3-2. There we go. Seems like the most likely. Yankee and Zulu. The Yankee has the arc onto final. Zulu is a T. Thanks, Max. We'll probably do the arc then, because it looks like an immediate landslide. Oh, getting a bit of balance. We'll leave that running for a minute. Oh no, makes him work, says what he can. Yeah, there you go. Does a Dash 8 have a top of descent marker, says Manos? I feel like it did. But no, from the evidence I have here. Anyway, let's get rid of the yoke, because that's annoying me even just on the simulator. Alright. What's the clipboard? Ah, if you show the yoke, that's the clipboard. Ah. So for those of you who have flown the Dash 8, or Max will probably know what I'm talking about. If you get to one before it's been around for too long, there's a nice little Easter egg here on the yoke, but that often goes missing very quickly after these aeroplanes leave the factory, and obviously it's gone missing on this one as well, sadly. Right, so we'll put those on behind the yokes. There we go. Good stuff. So descent is to be set up. Right. There we go. We are 72% of you out of 58 votes would prefer the RNAV for 3-2. Instead of me going a minute, I'll give it another minute. But in the meantime, I'm going to start setting up because that seems highly likely. So flight plan, menu, arrive. You're going to change the runway, please. Runway 32, number 4. We're coming in via Lala, number 4. No transition. Let's do the RNAV Yankee. So I'll close that chart. Oh, that was not the right way round, so hold on. Lala arrival. Yeah, I'll be impressed if the vote manages to swing the other way at this point. But if you want it to, do, because we did once have a vote that started like this, and then I remember it almost swapped over, so don't give up hope. RNAV Yankee, runway 32, there we go. So we're coming in from the east, obviously, to Lura. So we're going to go via Menvo, aren't we? So we're not really going to fly much of the arc, I'm afraid, but that'll do. So we'll do number 3, Menvo. 5,000 feet mandatory, 210 knots, no problem, and then 2,600 feet down to Vidga, and then into Datsa. Datsa is 1,800 feet, final approach point, and then we'll do 3 degrees from there. So we'll just get ourselves down to 1,800 after Vidga. So actually that's slightly easier to coordinate, so that's good. I like that one. Usually Twitch streamers just use straw pile. Oh, thanks, Igloo. There we go. That would be more useful on there then. Yeah, so that's it really. There's not a whole lot to say. Well, I should make this a bit bigger. Sorry, it's tiny for you guys to try and see otherwise. Oh, it's not letting me. There we go. So, we're going to come into Lera. I'm sure there's a way to do this on here to see it as a sort of plan. There it is, I think. Is this working? I don't know. Yes. Yes, it is. Excellent. Just keep pressing buttons. Now that hasn't worked at all. It's remembered the old arrival. We're not going to... We're going Lerla and then Menbo. So let's... delete Vokil. Delete that. So we go Lerla to Menbo. How does that look? Lerla, Menbo. Menbo to... That's worked out. Vidgar. That's with a little bit of an arc. Down to 1800 feet, which is all on there. Great stuff. It's planned the VNAV. And then in to runway 32. So that's it. MSA's low, 2,200 feet. No problem there. Although we are obviously on a low QNH, so we must remember to set that correctly. And we are going to turn in and arm the VNAV, just as Max says, which makes sense. Let me close down the poll then. Yeah, there you go, 67%. So it did start to go back the other way. So there you go, 5 minutes, we'll end that poll. 74 votes, 68% want the RNAV 3.2. So that's the way it went today, but never give up, because sometimes the RDS wins. Rare, sadly. Let's put in the minima. So we actually need RMP 0.1 and RMP 0.3. So this is talking about different standards of RMP, area navigation performance, required navigation performance in this case. So 0.1 means we need to be within 0.1 nautical miles of where we think we are. 0.3 means 0.3. So 0.3 is easier and therefore needs less certification to do it. So I don't know what the dash would be. Max, what are your dash 8s? The Airbus tells us exactly what the standard it's running at on here. I'm sure it does somewhere. Data? Perf. I feel like perf, but no. There's only one page here. So we should land with 3.1 tons. That's plenty of way too much fuel when we get there. Anyway, by the way, to get the top of descent marker, if I press format to get it back to where it was and zoom out a bit, we need to actually tell the airplane what we want the vertical speed to be in the descent. So I'm going to do 2,200. Got to type it first. Ooh, can we put a degree in? No. So let's do 2,200. Well, that's a bit high actually. So top of descent in 91 miles. There we go. But you have to tell it, and there's the top of descent. So that's how you get the top of descent marker. You've got to go to the VNAV and press that. Next page. Yeah, I don't know if we can get it to prove it. So there, hopefully that answers your question, Manos. Lauren says, at least we aren't making you do a VOR approach. VORs are okay in the Dash. The Dash has the magical ability to fly VOR radial. We have this mode. Where's it gone? Is it just nav? Yeah, I think if you set the course correctly... There's no VORs at this airfield, are there? Oh, nav. No, see, VORs and so on are going out of fashion nowadays. Yeah, if you set the course bar and have the right nav source, you can just make it fly along a radial in nav mode and it will stay on that even without the wind. The Airbus does not have that ability. You cannot tell the Airbus to fly along a VOR radial. You'll have to either use track and adjust it yourself, and to be honest, track is so amazing it will probably be just fine, or you could put in a fake one and fly it in an overlay where you use a nav mode and just sort of have the raw data in the background. But the Dash will actually fly the raw data along the radio waves. It's very good. But no VORs here today to demonstrate that, sadly. The Dash can do Cat 2 approaches. It cannot auto-land. You would not auto-land off a Cat 2 approach. It will be a manual landing, which means being visual very late on in the day and then having to manually land. It's quite something. Good. Right, let's bring up the airport. This is the longest brief I've ever done on this channel. Runway 32, 2,300 meters, wind from the left, windy day, so we'll do a flap 35 landing. And we'll click here for the speeds, 118 VREF. Over the threshold, 3-degree approach, low MSAs, in we come. And I would hope, conveniently, off at Foxtrot Golf Park. That'll be a nice taxi in. That'll be what I'd want to do. Much better than going down here and having to come back. Very quick. Great news. Good stuff. Minima, that's what we were doing. I got totally distracted. So we're going to go with RNP 0.3. Max, are you able to help us? Is there a way to see the current RNP capability of the aircraft? The reason I say current is because aircraft will be certified to a certain level. But then if there's any downgrade, let's say one of the IRS's breaks, then you would perhaps need to, you might find the airplane can't navigate as well, or the GPS isn't working, and it might say instead of 0.1 it's at 0.5, stuff like that. The Airbus does that on the progress. Oh, there it is. I found it. Nav, obviously. Why wouldn't it? Can't believe that. Okay, thanks. Don't worry, Max. We found it. Nav. So here we go. RNP. We need 2 miles accuracy where we are. Our actual navigation performance, ANP, is 0.01. 104 knots of wind. Unbelievable. Also, the wind is displayed in true for some reason, not magnetic. True. We're only doing 240 knots. And I'm sure somewhere there's a way to see your Mach number. So FMS position. There's the RNP stuff. And it's using GPS and DME. Hold position just... What does that do? I don't remember what that does. Don't know. Should probably stop pressing it. Where's the Mach number? I remember it because when you're flying a Dash 8, obviously it doesn't actually display it on the PFD, so you feel a little bit cheated because you have the jet aircraft reporting their Mach numbers and you don't feel as impressive when you know, everyone loves saying a Mach number. Flying at Mach decimal 8, brilliant. Decimal 8 times the speed of sound, it just sounds great, whereas I'm flying at 240 knots, it's just a little less exciting. So I remember someone showed me you can actually see the Mach number here for a bit of a laugh. It's obviously not very high. We aren't limited by a Mach number in this aircraft in the same way. Hence, we don't need to know it. But I'm now going to spend all day looking for it. Ah, this looks... There we go. We can change the average passenger weight. So, and you put the fuel in here. Sure, you can... there's something. I remember doing something on this page. Is that like the freeze button in the Airbus MCDU, says Lauren? That's what I thought it would do, but then it carried on saying things, so I decided it wasn't anymore. No, I don't know why. It's not actually freezing the position. So I don't know. I feel like data should do something. No. Oh well, I'll give up on that. Don't remember where it would be. That is going to bug me for a while now. Yeah, well, I think we've done our approach brief. So configuring wise, what are we going to do? We can be clean all along this leg from Menbo. That's it's how far from the runway? 4 miles. So I want to be, when we reach Dutzer, gear down, flat 15, leave Dutzer, flat 35 sometime after that. And for the 4th time, I'm going to actually set the minima. So we're going with an MDA. So swap that over of 790. Actually, no, let's do 730 because we found out we are currently doing very well for the performance. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not just what the, I know this says actual is 0.01, but your airplane might not be certified to fly an approach based on that. Okay, I'll stop trying, I promise. Good. Right, here we go. Yeah, that's it really. So flat 35 landing, windy conditions, that's why I'm going to do flat 35, which we've got set here. Check our speeds, still good. And, oh, you can turn all this off. So for the approach, what are we going to do? Maybe we'll put the condition levers to max for this one. We won't do a reduced MP. On a windy day, I would not do reduced MP. Someone once described it to me as like, if you put the propeller levers up, it's like being in first gear. They're spinning faster, you have even quicker control of the thrust. It's great. So I'm going to do it like that. And that'll be the plan for that. Okay, I've got a bit of a... I do apologise. My chat has not been keeping up to date. By quite some margin. So let me have a look. So Twitch is coming through, but the YouTube chat I've been out of sync with. So sorry to everyone on YouTube who's been chatting. Yeah, it's not been working. I don't know why. So I'm just going to catch up a little bit. So Max says Q400 not approved for 0.1 yet. Currently only approved for 0.3. Perfect. So we'll use 0.3. Good job, I guess. Wrong on that. So we decided it would be 780. Yeah, so there you go. So even though the airplane is doing performance to that level, it's not actually certified. 790. There we go. Thanks, Max. Nav page. Data page is implemented in Sim. Sorry, RI Dog says, I've noticed the approach button doesn't arm on an RNAV. Am I doing something wrong? We shall find out, RI Dog. See, follow me along, because we did manage last time. Yeah, it should be on the nav page. It's in the works. One of Canada's airlines is actually working with the Havilland to work on it. There we go. So they're trying to get the better minima. The reason you want better minima is because in fog or something, you want to be able to get down. This could be the difference between making it into an airport or having to divert, which is obviously thousands and thousands of pounds or dollars or whatever currency. So it's crucial at times. But if it's too expensive to approve, then airlines won't bother. They'll have to have a reason to need it. Danny Rubel, good to see you. Thanks for coming along. You can go nav and VNAV all of the way in, says Max. Okay, let's see how that works. Although I remember never using VNAV in the descent. So Owen says, hello, this is cool. I'm from Halifax. Excellent. We'll see you there soon. Sorry, Max. You were saying nav page, but yeah, my chat has not been coming through properly. So I do apologise. And yeah, is it missing? Am I missing? Something? I think it's missing for now. Poltergeist says, is it me or is the fuel burn low? Either that or SimBrief keeps overestimating my fuel with a heavy negative bias. Yeah, no, I agree. I've been finding the fuel burn. I think the fuel burn's right. 800 kilograms an hour is what the Dash burnt. So I remember that being right. So maybe SimBrief is overestimating a little bit. Stroke headwind should start a descent earlier. Maybe 1000 VS in VNAVs is my sense. Yeah, could with the headwind, you'd normally start your descent later because obviously we're moving slower over the ground, so we don't actually need to descend at the same point. And they're talking about landings. Yes, we are going to land with power on, even flap 35. I've got this tutorial coming soon where we will talk about landings, but you don't really ever land the Dash 8 at flight idle. It just doesn't happen. Flap 15, you'll leave the power alone to land. Flap 35, you need to reduce the power, but you're still going to have torque on. You're just reducing the power whilst you raise the nose, and it's a bit of a balancing act. If you don't reduce the power quick enough, you'll find that as the nose comes up, you'll just go back up into the air. But if you reduce it too quickly, you'll just come crashing out of the sky. So yeah, it's a bit of a it is a bit of a challenge. So I'm hoping my video will help just with that. It's not you know, I haven't flown the Dash for years, so it's the best remembered, but I do remember it quite fondly because it was quite a challenge. Evening, Nick. Thanks for coming along. Max says Canadian stars are built for VNAV. There we go. Captain says AWS is broken. I can't work. So here I am watching 320 Sim in the middle of my workday. Excellent, Captain 40. Thanks for coming along. AWS. What's AWS? Poltergeist says I've had quite a few 250 to 350 feet per minute landings due to power coming out early. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see what happens today. The excuses so far are Dash 8, windy, non-precision approach. Can we use that? Yeah, I think we can. So the sequence is going to be about 30 feet to 20 feet flare, which is raising the nose a little bit. We need to get the nose up above 0, or at least to 0. The Dash 8, if you land at 0 degrees pitch on the Dash, you will be just about normally okay, but it's not recommended. If you land at 0 degrees pitch, because the airplane sits ever so slightly nose down on the ground, even if you're at 0 degrees pitch, you'll find that the main wheels touch first, which is crucial. You must not land on the nose wheel first. And it's very easy to wheelbarrow it in. So wheelbarrowing is if you were to land on that nose wheel first. So we trickle the power off and gradually raise the nose from about 20 feet. And that way we'll have the nose up and the airplane should settle onto the runway. In the meantime, we're going to counteract the drift with the rudder, and we are going to also put into-wind aileron after touchdown, which in this case is very much going to be from the left. So we'll need left aileron after landing. If we don't use left aileron after landing, we'll find that we have to use the rudder instead, and you end up sort of dancing on the rudder. Whereas if you put that into-wind aileron, it just works in this sort of aircraft, especially high-wing airplane. It's trying to lift up that wing very easily. Nav Canada is working on satellite-based aircraft tracking. That's nice. Goodness me. Yeah, there's loads going on. Oh, Amazon Web Services. Thanks, Dana J. Thanks, John. So that's gone down, is it? Oh, dear. That's what does those... Isn't Amazon Web Services what does the predictions on Formula 1? Which never seem to be close to reality. Yeah, the Dash 8 makes me feel like I'm diving on final approach, I suppose, guys. It does. It's a real change from jets. I mean, you can see the fact that we cruise with 0 degrees pitch. No problem. Even slightly negative. It's just the way it is. Yeah, tiny bit nose down. Dana J says AWS is responsible for a bunch of websites and cloud stuff. When it goes down, it takes a lot of the internet with it. Oh dear, that's never a good sign. Looking over at Twitch, Xcode Fly, good to see you. Xcode Fly. That was the message. Strong headwind should start descent earlier, maybe 1,000 feet. Yes, in that. And they say fuel burn is okay at high cruise altitude, but at low altitude it is quite off. There we go. Thanks for the info. Thanks for coming along. Manos is looking forward for Arnav to work in fly-by-wire. Yeah, exactly. That's that. I'm excited for that. That's going to open up a lot of the world. Beautiful day here in Canada. Amazing. This is a long sector for a Dash. Certainly when I flew it, we didn't really do many 2-hour flights. Yeah, it does look good. This is supposed to be real weather, Dave. This does look very nice for real weather, considering what we had earlier. But maybe that's blown through now. Sometimes you get that on windy days where you get beautiful sort of post-storm weather. Mike says, do you have a suggestion as to how much change in nose pitch on the A321 I should use? I don't know really. I don't really look at that. It's just an out the window sort of thing, but it's only going to be a few degrees. Yeah, only a few degrees. Max says, on approach, before the final approach fix, you want to make sure that VAP goes from arms to active. Once VAP is active, you can select out, set off. Right, so, and where am I going to see that? Is that in the box? In fact, let's cross-fill. And what's the procedure, Max? I never had a second box, so I'm not used to this. Do you just every now and then randomly press menu and cross-fill, or after every change? Oh, it says unlinked. That can't be good. Can you link them up to constantly update? How is this normally done? It's this was just a blank space in the ones I flew. Oh, on the FMA. Okay, great. So once that goes, you can deselect out. So yeah, Mike, for the flare. Yeah, so for the flare on the A321, the degrees just whatever it seems sensible. It's hard to say, really. It's very hard to say. Kai says, if only the Dash 8 had afterburners would be in Miami by now. I know. This is a long old sector. Just for that wind, we've been pushing into 100 knots the whole way. We're only getting over the ground at 250 knots. It's outrageous. Don't often get such strong winds so low down. Normally the jet streams sit a bit higher. So maybe this isn't jet stream related. Maybe this is low pressure related. Max says your PFD shows FMS 1, meaning it's running off the left FMS. So this side. So I'm used to the nav source over here just being FMS 1 as well. Like that. Because there was no FMS 2. Heading bugs are synchronized. I think there were some aircraft where they weren't synchronized. Sorry, Max, how are yours? Are your aircraft synchronized? I remember we had a sticker that said heading bug synchronized on all the airplanes because, and I assumed that meant that there were some Dash 8s out there where you would have FMS 1 and you got FMS 1 and 2, and you could also have heading bug 1 and 2, and there's also notably 2 heading bug selectors which you don't have on the Airbus, just the one. So that would mean I could have my heading bug here, you could have your heading bug over there facing north, and then if we swapped HSI, the airplane would just turn. Oh, actually it goes into super basic wing level pitch hold, the most basic modes ever invented. L nav and out, there we go, back where we should be. Amy Parent, thanks for coming along. Amy Parent, I believe, was involved in the development. So, thanks so much for coming along. And Amy says, depends. For direct 2s, you just execute the direct on the other side. Ah, okay, so we should just... So I cross-filled it. It's currently going to now. What does this side think it's doing? It's still got this vector in. So should I do the same then? Direct to waypoint 5. Yeah, I'm surprised at how unintuitive this is. Oh, there we go. That solves it. And now will it sequence the whole way? So was it just unsequenced because I didn't direct to earlier like I should have done? I thought crossfilling would do it. There we go. So thanks Amy, and thanks for your hard work on this outrageously excellent add-on. We are very much enjoying it. Top of descent alert, there it is, it's coming up. It's been great fun for me to relive this, especially such a quirky box. But yeah, like I say, the 2 FMSs is just a mission. Here's PVOR. This is where you can make a fake VOR. but I don't remember how to use that. I think that's effectively the same as the inbound course that we do in the Airbus. So top of descent, we get a little VNAV path, and as I said before, VNAV mode itself, I remember we never used. Let's go down to 18. Is 18 the transition level in Canada? Oh, the first officer might be joining us. Yep, 18,000 in Canada as well. They're the same as Americans. Please don't walk on that. Hello. She might not say hello because she's You gonna say hello? Dear. She doesn't say. I was holding it up to the microphone, so all you heard there was the complaint at the indignity of being held up to the microphone for too long. She doesn't talk when she's already got your attention usually. What was I saying? Yeah, so first officers arrived just in time. That's my cat, to those of you who haven't seen or met her before. But she has a habit of arriving just when I need to use the rudder pedals, and now she sat on my lap, so it's impossible. So that's the fifth excuse. Yeah, VNAV very prone to errors. So in the real aircraft, this is I've had it before where you're in VNAV mode and then it just decides to dive down, and you see the required feet per minute here just increase and increase and increase, and the airplane just dives down, which is not much fun. So very common to use vertical speed. Here we go, VNAV. So I'm going to press VS, and I'm going to, before I do that, finish doing what I was doing. 18,000, and crucially outsail. It should automatically arm, in my opinion, but this is completely accurate to the aircraft. They've done a great job with that. It would go. It just doesn't do outsail. You have to do it yourself. So then what I used to do was I'd do sort of 500 feet per minute, trickle the power back a bit, and then you'd need to do a bit of rudder trim, a bit of left rudder trim. Bit more, and a bit more, and just a little sequence like this, and that way the passengers didn't really, or you as pilots didn't really feel it. If you just went straight to flight idle and put 2,000 feet per minute, the whole plane would swing, and if you're a passenger, you used to feel it. And I've been a passenger and I've seen passengers look up because if you're sitting at the back, way back there, and suddenly the power's brought back because of the way the propellers produce thrust. They obviously provide, not obviously, I don't fully understand why, but they produce more thrust on one side than the other. So if you just idle them, you get a yawing motion, and that just swings passengers around at the back. It's very strange, very strange. But yeah, again, thanks Amy for coming along. Thanks for clarifying that, and thanks for the great work on this. Max says your PFD shows FMS1, meaning it's running to the left, which yeah, we've done. Excellent, thanks for that. Amy is the FMS gown, right? Excellent. So this now shows us the target vertical speed. So we only actually need to do 1,800 feet per minute to meet our Menvo. To meet our Menvo at 5,000, we need to do 19. So what's this one to? Yeah, that's a bit beyond me. Can't remember what this is showing us 1,800 feet per minute for. Because I would say we're slightly high. We can see we're 900 feet high, and it's reducing, so it's all getting there. Yeah, and this was pretty much my understanding of this page back when I used to fly the aircraft. It wasn't. I suspect Amy knows more than I ever have about it. Manos says, this is Canada, shouldn't it be cold and white? It is cold and windy, but yeah, there's not snow in X-Plane, sadly. 4Prawn says, I've been working on circuits at Edinburgh in the A320, thanks to the video. I think judging the flare is tricky to learn. I'm always too high and too much unless I really watch the PFD. Yeah, it takes a bit of practice. I've got a few videos on landing the Airbus on the channel, so hopefully they'll help you if you find those. There's the outsail beep, 1,000 to go, but we're going to keep descending down now. So let's go. Let's put the 5 in the window. Let's see if VNAV can do it. There is another reason VNav is not so popular with Dash 8 pilots. Or I can't say that because I'm not one anymore, but there's a reason it wasn't so popular with me. The Airbus is designed for everything to be LNAV, VNav, because you've got managed speed as well. You've got to remember that the Dash 8, if you put it into VNav, you're not directly controlling the vertical speed. So, but you are in charge of the power levers. So if the airplane suddenly has a change in its heart, so let's say it's doing 600 feet per minute now, and we're going to VNav, and we'll actually have to capture it, I think, which it will do, because we are over the 1700 actually required. There's VNav path. So let's say we had more power on, because we want us to be flying fast in the descent. In fact, we will fly fast in this descent, because I want to get there today. Then it changes its mind and it suddenly increases the vertical speed and you're busy doing something else. Now I know you shouldn't be, someone should always be flying, but you know, things do happen, and you could then find that of course you're overspeeding because you needed to reduce the thrust, whereas the Airbus would have reduced the thrust for you because it's using auto thrust. So that is another reason VNav is not quite as fun of a thing. So this is the fastest we can get the Dash 8, 275 knots in the descent between 20,000 feet and well, 10,000 feet realistically. But here you go, look, so now I'm doing 276 and it's doing 2,300 feet per minute. So you just don't have as much control over it. It's, yeah, it's interesting. Amy says, exactly, once both FMSs are nabbing to the same waypoint, they should do their own sequencing. Excellent. So let's see, let's go into Lula. Excellent. That's good to know. Warwick, good to see you. Tuned in late. Nice route from where I was born to a wonderful city I used to live in for school. Excellent. They built Halifax so far inland from Halifax to avoid the fog in the city. It didn't help. There you go. Yeah, as ever. Sim doesn't yaw with power change. Yeah, that's something I have noticed a little bit. Yeah, that would be nice to see. Max says your target VS is what it's going to try to do, but you are also given the VS required to hit the waypoint. Perfect. Microcent says we use VNav all the time. Once you get used to it, it's super efficient as you never level off. Yeah, so in the Airbus I'd use VNav for everything. So we're effectively on a base leg now. We do need to set the QNH, most importantly, because we're already going to an altitude. We're actually going to be there in no time. Altimeter 2981. There we go, and see how that's dropped us down a bit lower than we thought. So 2981, 2981. So now, this red bar, see we're doing 270 knots, no problem. But remember, from about flight level 90 to 80, that red bar just drops down, and they've got that modeled perfectly as well. I believe it's a window issue, so because of bird strikes. But yeah, you've got to be really careful. It's one of those things that there's those that have done it and those that will, where you basically overspeed there. Oh, so you're all very happy with VNav, I see. Nixana says, hi, what's the process like when moving to a new aircraft type? Any challenges come to mind? Yeah, so there's big philosophical changes between aircraft like the Dash 8 and the Airbus. I'm going to idle the thrust now, and that might not be enough. We'll see. So they're at idle. Get the torque right back. And see that red bar dropping down with us? It's not going to be enough. Props to Max. Let's hope that works. That tends to give you much more braking. No, it's not going to be enough. Let's do it. Intervening. We need to slow down. It's so daft, but it's just how it is. Okay, that's worked out. Let's arm VNav path again and get the vertical speed back down. Do 2000. So the reason I go props to Max is because you get more drag when the propellers are trying to spin around faster, obviously. So we're now coming in on base leg of our approach. Canada, you have to be 250 at 10,000 feet. There we go. Quite a common one, that. Altimeters set. Approach landing briefing review. Cabin altitude controlled set. Ice protection as required. Approach checklist. Altimeters are set. Lights. Yeah, it's time. Strap everyone in. Get those landing lights on. Get those props back to 850 for now. So if you're a passenger and you hear the props increasing in RPM on approach, don't worry, it's not a problem. It could just be trying to fix a height issue. GPW's landing flap to 35 is set. Fuel transfer is off. Right, let's do the flow. These 4 switches pretty much come on together all the time. Standby hide, high pressing quantity, passenger signs are on. Caution warning lights check, cabin secure. Luckily in our airline they are always immediately secure. Landing checklist next. 220 knots but hitting some turbulence now. And we're staying in LNAV and hopefully VNAV path, and it should stay to VAP, says Max. This is when TCS is a lifesaver. Ah, great point. So we could have done TCS to just raise the nose there. Yeah, that's a good one, Max. VNAV is boring, says Captain 40. There you go. That's another way to look at it. So we can only be 5,000 feet at Menvo. It's done a great job of getting us there. 1,700 feet per minute is the rate. But you see how it's constantly changing using VNAV. So we have to constantly adjust the power with that. Whereas if you use vertical speed, you set the vertical speed, you set the power. There'll be less changes, but you may level off and therefore have to do that. So out star. Let's wind it down to the next limit of 2.6. As ever with the Dash 8, instead of just carrying on, I'm going to have to repress it, and I'm going to have to press outsail to make sure it does actually capture it. It's just daft. Manos, no worries, we don't need to record for the replay, but thanks for reminding me. But for this one, X-Plane records it automatically. Yeah. So 220 knots. Let's start zooming in. So it wants to pass Vidga at 2629, which is perfect. And then we'll drop down to 1800. And hopefully that'll just automatically transfer and we can get rid of outsail. Okay, so Max reckons no need for outsail unless you're told to level off a specific altitude. Amy Parent says, I disengage outsail once on the approach. VNAV. Right, so this is because we can go down to 2,600 feet here, which is that's the lowest we can go. After Vidga, we can go to 18. The Airbus has a similar thing with whether we should set the altitude below us or not. But if we disengage outsail, it won't level off and it will stay in VNAV, which is clearly going to be easier than having to constantly intervene and change all the modes, as we saw earlier. So I'm gonna listen to that advice. Oof, there's a bit of a breeze. Start slowing down now. We are getting pretty close in. So the problem here is we are very close in. Let's go condition leave us to max again. So now it will just sail through the next altitude restriction and it should just convert straight onto the approach. But of course, slight there's the radio altimeter. Slight issue with that would just be that you don't want to accidentally go below any of these altitudes. They are hard floors. That's the thing. So 800 feet we must not go below. So it depends how much faith you have in it. In the Airbus, you've got two options. You can set it in the window, but obviously here outsail is just interfering. Let's go to flat 5, just about. Power coming right back. So it's doing a great job. This has worked out nicely as a 3-degree approach. Let's set the final inbound 3-2. I'm going to have to move the first officer shortly, I'm afraid. And let's go to flap 10, just so I can get the speed back. Oh, that's funny. The gear horn activates at flap 10. I didn't realise that. Oh, well, that's mad. So let's put the gear down. Bleeds are on and min. And we're going to leave the condition levers at 1020 for this approach. Oh, it's really shaking around. Okay, get the power back on now. Go to flat 15. Well, that drags out. Excuse me. Okay. She, a rather disgruntled first officer, is leaving. So staying in VNAV is not doing a great job. Because we revved up the power there. So now it's going to have to dive down to make that again. I should have probably transmitted to somebody. But there we go. Oh dear, 1,500 feet per minute. Okay, there's 158. Let's go flap 35. Just want to make sure it's not going to overspeed when we do that. Because again, the dash doesn't show you an overspeed. You have to just know. So there's flap 35. Very dangerous to be at idle with flap 35 and gear down. So I'm going to add some power now and do the landing check. This landing gear down through greens. Flaps 35 and indicating. Get the power on. Get the power on. This is why this is such a handful, this airplane. Condition levers are at 1020. Bleed 1 or 2 are min and on. Flight attendants notified. Next is after landing. Speed's good. Power is good. So I'm not trying to aim to be exactly at that the app. That would just be daft. But you can see the pitch, -5 degrees on approach, no problem. That's quite normal. So the trick here is to stabilize the power setting, really. We don't want to be shifting it too much. So I reckon it could be anywhere up into the 30%. Right, here we go then. Really windy. Looks like quite a wide runway, but 2 whites, 2 reds. The VNAV path is doing a fantastic job. I know we sort of glossed over the non-precision, but as Max and Amy guided us, it just works. If we go around, we'll have to re-engage outsell. We are sitting a bit fast there, so maybe about 25%. We're about 25 tons, so I thought it would be 25%. Let's try that. Right, autopilot off. Let's give it a go.
500.
So the wind is very much from the left. 26 knots here. We are a bit fast. Let's sort that out. But it responds so quickly. You've got to be ready to get the power back on. 3 reds. Those trees are a bit big. Oof, this is the worst we've ever had on stream. No doubt about it.
50, 40, 30, 20.
Too high. Come on.
10.
Power back. There's touchdown. Flight idle. Nose gear down. Into disc. That'll do. Sorry to the USA who's trying to set off. Oh, goodness me. There we go. Made it. That was, yeah, quite a final approach. I hope this aircraft was ready for that. And over we go. Just a normal landing in Gatwick, says Willie. Yeah. Right, here's our exit point. And squeezing on the brakes. Oof. No, don't do that. That's my side stick interfering. It's trying to do the yaw. I tell you what, it's a really good feel they've got for this. The way it handles on final and the way the engines respond, they've really, I don't know, they've just really captured it from what I remember anyway. Thanks, Max. I think we got away with that. I don't want to know the feet per minute because I'm sure it's not very good. But again, we'll look at the replay because X-Plane gives us a replay. And if the technique was right and we're in the right place, we'll count it as a win. But that was blustery, yeah. Right, after landing, loads to do now. Let's bring control locks on. Let's bring it to a stop or we'll never get through all this. Flaps in. We'll turn those off, turn those off. We'll put the bus tie on for some reason. Pitos off. Lights off, taxi light on. Light to red. Sure, there's something else. Let's start up the APU. Bleeds are on and min. I think that's fine. Good. After landing, control lock on. Transponder. I knew there was something. Transponder to standby. Come on. There we go. Flaps 0. Pumps off. Yaw damper off. I don't remember doing that. But maybe. Yeah, yaw damper off. Flight taxi goes to taxi to drop those spoilers. So many things. It's just amazing. Pitos, windshield heat. Oh, dear. Yeah, windshield heat. I like that they've shown that the wiper switch isn't used often and is also plastic, whereas the metal... Is it metal or plastic? I don't know. But anyway, it's worn away more because this switch is used more often than the wipers. I like that. The most used switch in this cockpit is the rudder trim. Used every power change. And it's nice to see the paint wearing off that as well. Windshield off, ice protection off, main bus tie, APU starting, bleed 1 or 2 on and min. That's the afterlanders. Over 200 feet per minute, there we go. Doesn't matter. There's that. Oh yeah, another quirk if you use the wipers and then just turn them off, they just stay where they are. So the Airbus, when you turn them off, they automatically park. In this Dash, you have to actually hold the switch to park, and then they will drive themselves to the park position. Just a little bit of trivia. I hope we don't get kicked off of FlyJSim forever. I hope that Airbus was okay with us doing that. But yeah, no, I don't know. I think that vertical speed was fine. 226 is Captain Poland. Yeah, it's all we can do. And those vertical speeds aren't accurate. I've said it many times. They are. There's a lag. They encourage floating along the runway, because the longer you float, the better your vertical speed will be. Right. Let's do that HSI. That gets rid of the flight directors, and we'll just go and park up somewhere. Danny says, that's not a bad landing with the wiggle wobble approach. I expected a bit worse. Yeah, yeah, me too. They need to cut trees on clearways, says my 2 cents. Agreed to that. We should have set the missed approach altitude. Yeah, thanks, Max. Victor Tamez asks about landing in a Cessna 208 Caravan. It's a tricky one. I don't have much advice for that. I haven't flown it, I'm afraid, and I haven't spent much time with it in the sim either. Willie Canuck says, and then if it's the last flight into Edinburgh, you need to find a piece off the taxiway to do a run-up for 5 minutes. True story, while everyone is waiting to get off the plane. Yeah, so I'll show you what that is. Let's see if we can do it here. Parking brake on. That's the overspeed governor test. How many of you have seen or heard of that one? Thanks, Manos. Glad you liked it. Scary but good, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for those follows. Right. Let us see if it works. I don't know if they've modelled it. Lars Rast says, is chat going on in another place, or is my Twitch chat just broken? It's going on YouTube as well. So, overspeed governor goes up like that. You have to hold it there. And then you have to rev the engines. And you should see the propellers. I think you have to get rid of that as well. They make a sudden sort of surge. No, I don't remember. I don't remember what it was. The overspeed governor is because if the propeller lets go and it tries to overspeed, it's very dangerous. You don't want them spinning too fast, and they could just go haywire. So there's a governor in there, a controller that will stop that from happening. Oh, it's got to be the other way. No, you hold it there. So you had to hold that switch forward and then just rev up the engines. But for some reason, you had to get to a high enough power setting, and then they would suddenly surge. I don't think it's modelled. It'll be somewhere around here. And they go... But no. Anyway, right, we'll stop trying that. So that was that's something that you test every now and then. Flight taxi, taxi. Good, right, let's go and park. Gary Stewart says, first time I got to catch you live. Thanks for sharing how to fly the bus. I do it every day now in Microsoft Flight Simulator and can kind of pretend that I know what I'm doing. Excellent, Gary. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Glad it's been helping. Max says, thank you, 320 SimPilot. That was great. 2 hours. You seem to remember everything important, even if European Q operators don't use VNAV to its fullest. No, we don't. And perhaps they do now, and that's just me being out of date. But yeah, no, it's been great. And thanks for all the context from you on the real world. Yeah, no worry, Lars. Yeah, it is a bit confusing, but this is the sort of system we've ended up with. Willie, exactly. It's an end-of-day maintenance check, but it didn't have to be done every day. I think it was just done every now and then. Julius, yeah, we will be back in the Toliss very soon. Oh, overshot that one. Nothing to see, nothing to see. No, that doesn't help. Let's look up here, just looking at these clouds. Right, let's get on to stand. I may have missed something about that governor test that would have worked. Generator on, light off. Grinding to a halt in the wind. But don't worry, replay coming very soon. Yeah, and we do have a fantastic, by Bounce on Discord, who kindly sent me a fantastic SimPilot man delivery for the Dash 8. So we do have one, which will feature in the video on landings. You see this frustration with this constant caution warning panel just dinging all the time. Manuel says, oh, that was the engine test they did at stand parked in a few of the flights I've been on. Yeah, so if it suddenly revs up really high, it's quite disconcerting. Some pilots would tell the passengers what was going on. Some would just do it quickly and get it done on the basis that instead of sitting there explaining it, you could have had it finished by the time. Not sure what I think's best, but yeah. So brake on. Landing page is up. Brake is set. AP generator's on. So let's... Another super satisfying sound as you bring it back to start feather. And this is where all the passengers stand up, even though they're not supposed to, until the signs go off. Sit there for 30 seconds, and we can run through the checklist. Shutdown. Again, a longer checklist than you'd ever imagine. Taxi light off, emergency brake on, standby high P2 control. Oh, I should have left those on then, but now they're off. Power levers disc, condition lever start feather. So this checklist has passenger signs off. So maybe in America or Canada, that's what you'd do. We didn't. Nose of steering off. Important for the next sector. Radar off. Anti-skid. We'll leave it on. Bleed air 1 and 2. Min and off. Oh, so much to do, isn't there? Amazing. APU is on. Emergency lights. I wouldn't do that because the plane's still got electrical power. Now we can go fuel off. Fuel off. Lights. Battery master. So we'll put the beacon to off. And that's it. Welcome to Halifax. We've done our second, or no, this will be our third or fourth Canada flight. But our third flight in the Dash 8. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it. And we're going to jump into the replay soon. Lovely weather here, aside from the wind. It's really cleared up. So, Pearl UK, when I next fly the Dash, I'll use that livery, or maybe I'll put it in the link to the video. So I will provide that to you then. And the first class cabin here with 40. YouTube has 158, so 4 points. There we go. Twitch counts as first class. Right, let's disconnect from... Clicked all the wrong things. Let's disconnect from FlyJSim. And let's replay. So, wobbling around, and this is the thing with the Dash. It's so light, it does get thrown around. Bit of right rudder, into the flare, into the flare. Yeah. Not great. Not terrible. Got the drift off in the touchdown zone. There was just a little bit of sink at the end there. That you'd have probably felt this landing. Yeah. Totally fine, but that would have been a rough, windy landing, no doubt about it. Excellent. Out of interest, let's have a look in the flight deck at some of the numbers.
100.
So, a lot of this isn't working because we're in the replay mode. So we were at 26% torque. Pitch was already up at 1.
30. 20.
Then a bit too much time. So that's where we lost the energy. So I flared too high, and I said it at the time. So it's just getting used to this picture where you sink so low to the runway on the Dash 8. And it's 3 degrees pitch already. So this is the problem. We're losing a lot of energy here. The torque's back at 20%. So lo and behold, it's just that last 10 feet, it just drops a bit too much, or a bit more than ideal. So we'll have to try out more of those. But that's the first windy landing I've done in one in X-Plane. So since I flew the real thing, that's my excuse there. I thought this prop RPM had been fixed, but it seems to have returned. I'm sure I'd had it work a few times. But anyway, let's do the old... This would look good. This would have been a good spotting day. Yeah, it does look great wobbling around the Dash. See, there's a flare way too high. Okay, gonna have to get used to that. There's a touchdown. That's great. Good fun. Good fun. See the rudder working. No worries, John. Thanks for coming along. Mela says 3.8 Rotogen, not great, not terrible. Yeah, from the excellent miniseries Chernobyl. Right, here we go then. So it's time to, I think, which is the wing view for this one? Probably this one today. Airport's out that side as well. Let us set it to a reasonable altitude. That wind, yeah, that's great. Somewhere back here should be good, seeing as we're barely moving over the ground. Okay, so I apologise about the chat. It's been a bit behind, both on YouTube and Twitch, so I can only apologise if I've missed any messages. But I will say thank you all so much for coming along, of course. Thank you for taking the time. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed this one. And it's, yeah, as ever, it's just a total pleasure to A, use this add-on, and B, be back in the Dash 8. More streams, videos coming soon. Probably my next stream, I'm anticipating a Twitch sort of casual stream as we get to grips with perhaps the Junkers 52 and the F-18. So that will be hopefully coming soon enough. But that one, if you want to be notified of that, join the Discord. I will put it onto Discord. And alternatively, follow me on Twitch, and it will, as long as you have notifications on, it will notify you when I'm going live. So those are the options for that one. Otherwise, thanks to all of you who came along. Thanks to all the moderators who have been working hard, keeping us safe in the chat. Thanks, Max, for coming along for your extra insight on the Dash 8. And, of course, everyone else with all their insight. Matthew Presley with the US flying and so on, as ever, for joining us and helping us out. And lots of you have been helping us out today, so I apologise. I can't name everyone. But, yeah, thank you to those who kindly donated as well. Really appreciate it. Thanks to those watching along, even if you didn't chat. If you did enjoy the stream, please leave a like on YouTube. It makes a big difference to the channel. And we will leave you now with a replay. One last look. Look at that nose down. So flat 35 approach. Nose down. I think we'll have to do London City soon, won't we? We really need to give that a go. And there's that crosswind. Lovely. And I'm going to say thanks for those follows. Thanks for the donations. And we will see you again in another video or live stream soon. Keep safe and well. Good night.